Chapter 51 Ain is Graduating. It's a new month. Please beg for monthly votes. Looking at your achievements this time and your contribution to the capture of Heavy Boxer Fidari, Icebear and others, I announce that Naval Headquarters Lieutenant Colonel Air has been officially promoted to Colonel and serves as the base commander of the G-34 branch. The G-34 branch was the branch that originally governed Alabaster and the nearby sea area. Sengoku'S appointment was just in line with Air's wishes. Yes, thank you Marshal. I guarantee that no pirate group will pass through in my jurisdiction. Nodding, Sengoku was still very satisfied with his attitude. Okay, this is over, you can get out. After saluting several people present and saying goodbye, Air turned and left the office. The three admirals leaned on the sofa and silently watched him leave, all thinking of Air's information. In the dream column, the words "become a Marine Admiral" are clearly written. The three of them secretly muttered at the same time, "arrogant/amazing/terrifying brat." After leaving the Marshal's office, Air glanced around in confusion. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar headquarters, he didn't know where to go for a moment. After thinking about it, Air went to the recruiting training camp that he was most familiar with after 5 years of stay. Along the way, Air passed by more than a dozen officers from his headquarters. Most of them were in a hurry. Even if they noticed him, they just glanced at him and ignored him. This situation didn't change until Air came to the recruiting camp. As early as Air arrived not far from the recruit camp, several sailors standing guard at the door recognized him and waved to him excitedly. This situation became even crazier after entering the recruiting camp. When a junior shouted out his name, the scene immediately became uncontrollable. "It's Senior Air." "Senior, I'm your fan, can you sign your autograph for me?" "Senior Air, I like you. Please date me." "No. You should marry me." "No, you should have a baby with me." Several cute schoolgirls started arguing as they talked, and even had the tendency to get physical. Seeing that something was wrong, Air quickly used the combination of shave and moonwalk to escape, and disappeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Seeing the idol leaving, everyone dispersed in disappointment. Only 3 bold schoolgirls remained where they were, staring at each other. With such terrifying momentum, even Instructor did not dare to step forward to dissuade him. Hiding in a corner, Air observed the situation outside and secretly wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. He was quite frightened by these crazy fans just now. At this moment, someone suddenly tapped Air on the shoulder. Thinking that he had been discovered by a fan, Air quickly rubbed oil on his feet and prepared to run away. A hand grabbed his arm, and then a familiar voice said, "Air, it's me." Air calmed down after hearing this voice, and when he looked back, it turned out to be his good friend Ain, whom he had not seen for a long time. She was as concise and capable as ever. Judging from the sweat on her head, she must have been training just now. Air breathed a sigh of relief, and then said happily, "It turns out to be you. I was shocked." "Long time no see, how have you been lately?" Ain smiled and let go of his hand, smoothed his hair and said, "It's been a long time indeed." "I haven't contacted me since he left. If there hadn't been news that you defeated several big pirates, I thought you had been buried in the sea." After hearing these words, Air remembered. Since he left Marineford, he has never contacted Air and others. Thinking of this, Air couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. I'm sorry. I apologize for making you worry about me." "Idiot, who is worried about you?" Ain blushed and muttered shyly. Air didn't react and continued subconsciously, "Yeah, that's good." After finishing speaking, Air realized what stupid thing he had just done, and he wanted to give himself 2 big mouths. Just when he was thinking about how to find extra time, Ain returned to normal and changed the subject. "By the way, Binz doesn't know about your return yet. Let's go find him. I almost forgot about him." "Let's go now." Air's attention was diverted. He patted his head and then thought of his good brother Binz. He greeted Ain and turned towards the place where the two often trained together. Looking at Air, who didn't even look back, Ain secretly cursed idiot and hurriedly chased after him. At noon, in a restaurant owned by military families, Air, Ain, and Binz sat together and chatted about their recent experiences. Among them, Air, who had traveled from Grand Line to East Blue, had the most say. He kept telling his story to the two of them. As expected of Air, he captured a pirate with a bounty of 88 million as soon as he left the headquarters. "That's really impressive." "No way, Vice Admiral Garp's grandson really wants to be a pirate, and he asked you to go to East Blue to educate them." "A scum like Mouse is not worthy of being a Marine. He is simply a disgrace to Marine." "Sister Hina, speaking of which, I haven't seen her for a long time." "Nanny." "Air, you killed Crocodile of the 7 warlords of the sea." "You're lying." By the time the story was finished, Air's mouth was a little dry, but he couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction as he watched the 2 good listeners exclaiming as the story went up and down. After the story was told and the wine was almost drunk, Ain suddenly said with longing, "It's really interesting to go to sea, but it's coming soon. Binz and I will graduate in a few days." Chapter 52, in the newspaper. "Please give me a monthly ticket." Speaking of this, even Ain, who has always been calm, couldn't help but look forward to the day of graduation and chatted about his plans for the future. Only Air was stunned and fell into silence when he heard the news. He remembered it very clearly. Zephyr was in Ain's class, and when he was leading the graduating students to go overseas for internship, he was attacked by Edward Weibull, who called himself Whitebeard II. Times here have been changed. Except for Ain and Bins, all the students on the ship were killed. Even teacher Zephyr had an arm cut off by him. Although Air is not as familiar with these students as Ain, they are all his companions who have been with him for 5 years. Moreover, teacher Zephyr has taught me unreservedly for so many years, and I cannot just sit back and watch because of the situation. Air, who had a keen mind, noticed his abnormality and asked worriedly, Air, what's wrong with you? Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? Air was stunned for a moment. When he saw the two people looking at him with concern, he explained with a smile, No, I am a phantom beast type user with a very good body. Bins was relieved to hear that he was okay. But Ain continued to ask, Then why do you look a little unhappy? Women are really keen. Air thought helplessly. I was just wondering what excuse I should use to go with you. I'm also quite interested in this internship. Ain was relieved after hearing this, and then she thought of the scene of the three of them reuniting and going out to sea to catch pirates. They excitedly discussed how to get teacher Zephyr to be merciful and take Air with him. Seeing the two friends talking and laughing, Air put aside his worries and joined their discussion. The next day, the three of them came to Zephyr's office together, and Air told Zephyr his plan. You, a graduated guy, want to participate in an internship? Zephyr looked at Air with an expression on his face that was teasing me. Air poured him a glass of wine in a flattering manner. Bins was massaging his shoulders, and Ain was acting coquettishly. Teacher Zephyr, just promise him, we also want to act with Air, just treat it as a make-up assessment. Seeing the cute student acting coquettishly towards him, Zephyr couldn't stand it for a while. This is not something I can decide. I can only agree to it if the marshal approves it. Seeing that teacher Zephyr's attitude was relaxed, Ain took advantage of the victory and pursued him. Marshal Sengoku is your friend. As long as you ask, he will definitely agree. Teacher, just agree. Air also handed him the wine glass and looked at him with a pitiful expression. Zephyr reluctantly took the wine and drank it, then nodded in agreement. The three of them cheered and worked more diligently to massage him and pour him wine. Zephyr could only shake his head and smile bitterly. In this way, 5 days later, Air boarded the training ship with Ain and others. The students of the same class on the boat couldn't help but exclaimed when they saw Air, and quickly gathered around him. Air, haven't you graduated? Why are you still interning with us? Yes, I obviously heard that you defeated the former Shikibuka and have been promoted to colonel. Is there any special mission this time? Everyone was talking so much that Air couldn't stand it anymore, so he had to find an excuse to fool them, and then he managed to escape. After running into the cabin and arriving at his room, he saw Ain and Bins already sitting on the bed, waiting for him, and then he complained, I didn't expect that my victory over Crocodile would spread so quickly. Marshal Sengoku obviously said that this was a stain on the government and should be kept secret. Air picked up a newspaper in a funny way and said with a strange tone, Didn't you read it? This is today's world economic news. I didn't expect that you are still a prince. Air, Nanny, Air exclaimed, took the newspaper and read it carefully. The first title is very eye-catching. Marine supernova kills 7 warlords of the sea. Then Air saw his big profile picture, and the most interesting thing was that it was his ID photo from Marine. I don't know how Morgan's got this Birdman. Then there is an introduction to Air's life, including his fruit abilities. Then there is the story of how he killed Crocodile. Except for the fact that he killed Lao Sha, the rest is all nonsense. He even wrote such nonsense as the battle lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and Crocodile knelt down to beg for mercy. He even boasted about Air, calling him a marine supernova and the future admiral. Although it is true, it is too ostentatious. Finally, Air also saw a photo of himself as a child with Cobra holding Vivi and holding her hand on a section. It seemed to be a photo taken while out on patrol. The above introduces Cobra's identity and describes himself as the Prince of Alabaster. That's right, he is Cobra's adopted son and can be considered a prince. However, this behavior of Morgan's is likely to attract a group of pirates who hate him, which will be detrimental to Cobra, Vivi and others. Closing the newspaper, Air couldn't help but curse, Bastard Morgans, sooner or later I'm going to find you, pluck out all your bird feathers, and throw you into a pot to make soup. Chapter 53 Whitebeard, why are you so angry? Isn't this a good thing? Looking at the angry Air, Bins asked in confusion. Air sighed helplessly, looked at the newspaper in his hand and murmured, I really have to. He's famous all over the world, this little brat. Ha ha ha. Somewhere in the New World Garp read the latest newspaper, eating donuts and laughing nonchalantly. Bogart stood beside him and said with the same emotion, when I first met him, he was a kid who didn't understand anything. I didn't expect that he would become so famous in just a few years. Ha ha ha, isn't this bad? Marine's future depends on these young people. The Whitebeard pirates, aboard the Moby Dick. The world's strongest man, Whitebeard Edward Newgate drank the wine in one gulp, looked at Marco holding the newspaper and asked, is that kid playing in the sand dead? That's right, Dad. The newspaper said that he was defeated head-on by a 13-year-old boy. Morgans called him the future Marine Admiral. Gula-lila-tilda. That guy Sengoku still trained some good brats. The future Marine Admiral? Such brats are still far away. When you come to New World and see the vastness of the world, if you are not dead, stop talking nonsense like this. Wonokini, Ghost Island. Kaido drank wine and cried loudly. The boys of Beast's Pirates looked at their boss who was getting drunk and crazy again, and they all stayed away, not daring to come forward at all. Yan Liangjin looked at Kaido and said calmly, "Give up. Since he is a marine, there is no way he will join us anyway." But I want it so much." Kaido started acting coquettishly and said unreasonably. Jin sighed and comforted him helplessly. "Then wait until he comes to New World, capture him and throw him into the Rabbit Don, forcing him to join." Hearing this, Kaido beamed and clapped happily in agreement. "Oh, Higurashi, what a good method. That's it. I must get the Phantom Beast breed." Not to mention that with a newspaper, a lot of big geese in New World knew about her. Just say that in the first half of the Grand Line, on an unknown island, the interns led by Zephyr were fighting fiercely with a group of pirates. "Damn pirates, go to hell!" Lush Bins shouted while doing a weird dance. Following his movements, a large number of vines sprouted from the ground, tying up all the dozens of pirates nearby. Ain stepped forward with two short blades in hand, and eliminated the pirates who were tied up and unable to move one by one. The two cooperated tacitly, and a large number of pirates were killed by them as they moved left and right, clearing a spacious road. Seeing that his men were so vulnerable, the pirate captain angrily kicked away the students who were entangled with him and jumped towards the two of them. Ain had noticed him a long time ago. When he rushed towards him with his sword, she flashed in front of the pirate captain and patted him twice with her hand that emitted purple light. A young man aged 32 or 3 turned into an 8 or 9-year-old kid in front of everyone. The pirate captain looked at his hands in disbelief and asked in a sweet voice, "What did you do to me? Give me my power back." Ain kicked him to the ground, and without any instructions, Bins controlled Teng Man to tie the guy tightly into a rice dumpling, and also blocked his mouth. Seeing that the situation was over, the pirates scattered and fled. The marine students shouted excitedly and ran after him. Looking at everything that happened on the island, Air yawned out of boredom and complained, "It's so boring. It's not interesting at all to just watch here." Zephyr snorted and said impatiently, "He's just a 30 million little pirate. If you take action, this internship will be meaningless. Just stay here." Yes, I." Before he finished speaking, Air's eyes flashed red and he turned to look in a certain direction on the island. "Teacher, do you feel it? A powerful guy is coming." Sensing it with all his strength, Air had a rough guess about the identity of the person coming. Zephyr also looked solemnly in that direction and responded, "Ah, I saw it. He is an incredible guy." "Air, call the little guys back first." Air nodded, opened his mouth and let out a loud dragon roar. The sound spread around and reached the ears of Ain and other students. "It's Air's dragon roar." "What happened?" "Let's go back quickly." Ain shouted, stopped the students who were still chasing the pirates, and led them to the warship immediately. When Ain and the others came back, the aura they sensed had already appeared in front of them. Looking at the mother and son, one tall and one short, Air immediately confirmed his guess. Zephyr also recognized the fat man and said with a serious expression, "It's Edward Weibull with a bounty of 480 million. It seems that he is in a bit of trouble this time." Chapter 54. Weibull is a tough nut to crack. Edward Weibull, in the original novel, killed a large number of marine students and cut off one of Zephyr's arms. After the Summit War, he was incorporated into the 7 warlords of the sea by the government, causing Zephyr to quit marine. The other side, wearing sunglasses and leaning on a cane, the short, wrinkled old woman put down the telescope in her hand and said to the tall but dull-looking Weibull next to her, "It's the former Marine Admiral Zephyr. I didn't expect to meet him here. It looks like they just killed a group of pirates and should have gained a lot." "Hey, Mom, do you want me to kill them?" The ugly Weibull, who has the same crescent beard as Whitebeard, is tall and fat, asked excitedly. "Idiot son, this old man is still the original admiral after all. If you have this time, you might as well sack 2 small towns. There is no need to fight to the death with him." After saying that, the old woman Miss Bargain wanted to take Weibull away, but at this time Zephyr jumped on a moonwalk to catch up. "Stop, scum of the sea, now that I've met you, don't even think about leaving." Zephyr stood in front of the two of them and said righteously. Air on the ship shook his head helplessly when he saw this, and quickly used his wings to follow, arriving next to Zephyr. Weibull scratched his head, looked at Bargain in confusion and asked, "Mom, what should we do? Our road is blocked." Bargain ignored him, looked at Zephyr arrogantly and said, "Do you want to arrest us?" What a shameless statement. She waved her crutch and pointed it at Zephyr and Air, and ordered, "Weibull, come up, let them see the power of Whitebeard's heirs." "Oh, I'm on it." Weibull let out a strange scream, brandished the same Naginata as Whitebeard, and rushed towards Air and the two of them with his short, chopstick-thin legs. Looking at Weibull, who was nearly 7 meters tall, Air pulled out Chendong and instantly transformed into a human-animal shape, swinging his sword and colliding with Weibull. When the two swords were combined, and a huge force was transmitted through Chendong, Air gritted his teeth and used both hands to swing the Naginata away. Taking advantage of the situation, he aimed at the gap at his neck and swept away. Weibull turned around to avoid it, then turned and hit Air on the back with the handle of the knife. Air stepped on his foot, and the figure flashed behind him and distanced himself from him. Whether it's the armament or the intelligence, this guy's level is not low. Coupled with that strange strength, he is indeed a man who is as powerful as Whitebeard when he was young, as Kizaru himself admitted. Teacher Zephyr, it looks like we have to join forces. I can't handle this guy alone. Zephyr took off his eyes, rolled up his sleeves, smiled and said, "Kid, let me see if your strength has improved recently." After saying that, he wrapped his hands in armed colors, stepped on the ground and appeared in front of Weibull, and punched him in the face. Armed iron body shattered. Weibull didn't check for a moment and was directly hit and flew backwards towards Air. "I can't let you stand out alone, teacher." One sword style, caressing and cutting. Following the words, a black flying slash struck Weibull's chest head-on. Suddenly, there was a not too deep wound on his chest. Damn, this guy's weaponry is so strong. Before he learns internal destruction, my attacks won't do much damage to him. Ah, it hurts. Even though the wound was not serious, Weibull was still lying on the ground rolling back and forth in pain. Upon seeing this, Barjin quickly reprimanded, "Idiot son, what are you doing? Get up and deal with them." Hearing her voice, Air shifted his gaze. "Old woman, don't scream here, watch me kill you." After saying that, Air roared at her with a roar of a fire dragon, intending to kill her first. At this moment, Weibull, who was still lying on the ground, suddenly stood in front of Barjin and split the fire pillar with a knife. "Asshole, don't even think about hurting Mum." "I'm angry." Barjin, who was hiding behind him and was startled, saw Weibull entering a state of anger and shouted excitedly, "That's it, my lovely son, kill them quickly." Weibull roared angrily, and also swung a powerful slash, attacking Air. Air snorted, "It seems we still have to deal with this guy first." Thinking like this, he raised his sword to block the slash. At this moment, Zephyr jumped up from behind him, closed his fists in front of his chest, and pressed against Weibull's chest. 6 styles, 6 King's Spear. A huge shockwave rushed towards his fists, penetrated Weibull's chest, and knocked him away along with Barjin behind him. He flew hundreds of meters away before hitting a boulder and stopping. Barjin was crushed by her lovely son and fainted on the spot. Weibull, on the other hand, didn't notice it. He spit out a mouthful of blood, patted the dust on his body and stood up. Upon seeing this, Air was very impressed by his resilience, and quickly rushed to him again, roaring, "Damn it, I'm going to kill you today." One sword style 3 unique cuts. Air slashed 3 times, but they were all blocked by Weibull's weapon, leaving only a few shallow scars. "Damn it, people who didn't know better thought I was doing scraping." Air secretly complained in his heart. At this time, Weibull also started to fight back. He simply swiped his sword, but Air used all his strength to block the blow with difficulty. Is this more like taking drugs? Why is it so powerful? Chapter 55 Explosion. Before Air could think about it, Weibull continued to attack, completely ignoring Zephyr. Dang dang dang. After several consecutive chops, Air's hands were shaking. Fortunately, Zephyr came to support at this time and knocked Weibull away with another punch. Glancing at him, Zephyr said nothing and continued to rush forward and get entangled with Weibull. Clenching his fists and stopping the trembling of his hands, Air took Chendong in front of his eyes and saw that, as expected, there were several gaps on it. Angrily, he sheathed Chendong, took off the entire knife from his waist and inserted it into the ground. Air looked at Weibull, who broke his saber, and his anger rose. "Damn it, this is the first time in all these years that Lozi feels so aggrieved. You stupid thing, let's see how Lozi beats you to death." 6 styles life return full power. Air, who was originally only over 3 meters tall in his human-animal form, quickly expanded in size after using up his life to return it, turning into a 10-meter-tall little giant in the blink of an eye. He bent his legs to gather strength, then kicked the ground and shot out like a cannonball, the iron fist of the fire dragon. Zephyr sensed Air's change and quickly stepped aside to avoid it. Weibull, who didn't understand the situation, took a solid punch from Air and was knocked backwards by the huge force. Air didn't stop, and used his shaved figure to dodge, and came to behind Weibull first. The fire dragon's hook, a kick packed with blazing heat, kicked him high into the air, followed by a flap of wings. "It's not over yet." Red Lotus fire dragon fist. With his hands covered in flames, Air struck hundreds of blows beneath him, knocking him several thousand meters into the air. Weibull's chest was already scorched by the high temperature, and a disgusting smell of meat came from his body. Air didn't give up. He came behind him and locked his limbs with his hands and feet, preventing him from using any strength. Then flames surged out of his body, and he spun at high speed in the sky with the help of his wings. After spinning for 30 minutes, until his brains were almost shaken out. Air used his special move, the Lotus of the Fire Dragon. Zephyr on the ground and the students watching from a distance watched the flaming meteor fall rapidly from the sky, and finally hit the ground hard, raising a large cloud of smoke. Zephyr coughed a few times, waved his hands to disperse the smoke and dust, and hurried towards the place where Air landed. In a large pit hundreds of meters in diameter, Air was dressed in a beggar's outfit and returned to his human form. He retched and climbed up from the bottom of the pit. Zephyr came to him, lifted him up and asked with concern, "How are you doing? Is the brat okay?" Air opened his mouth wide and vomited out all the contents in his stomach. Zephyr patted his back gently. After a while, he finally took a breath and said, "Okay, much better. Ahem, I won't use this idiot move anymore." He slapped Air hard on the back angrily, causing him to cough again due to the pain. Zephyr looked at Weibull in the pit, and saw that this guy's body was charred, his legs were drooped, and his head was stuck deep into the ground. Just when Zephyr thought Weibull was dead, unexpectedly, this guy's hand suddenly moved and he started struggling to stand up. Zephyr was shocked. What kind of monster physique is this? Has it not lost consciousness after suffering such a violent attack? Without any time to think, he jumped into the pit. He kicked him away, and before he could recover, he hit his head with dozens of punches wrapped in armor. Air was also shocked, and regardless of the consequences, he jumped down into the pit and punched and kicked him. The two fought for a full 2 hours until Zephyr's old habit relapsed and he couldn't help but take out the therapeutic spray and took 2 puffs before giving up. After taking a few deep breaths, Air couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he looked at Weibull, whose head was smashed and could no longer die. This unlucky child was really miserable. He died inexplicably under the unreasonable punches of the master and apprentice, and he deserved it. After spitting fire and cremating the unfortunate thing, Air helped Zephyr, who was exhausted, back to the warship. When he saw Barjin, who was still in a coma on the way, Air didn't forget to give her a ride on the finger pistol. After all, a family should be neat and tidy. On the boat, when they saw Air helping teacher Zephyr back, the students quickly brought chairs and helped him sit down. Seeing the concerned eyes of the lovely students, Zephyr couldn't help but feel very pleased. He refused the examination by the doctor on the ship, looked at everyone and said, "Something unexpected happened this time." If Air hadn't been there, the consequences would have been disastrous. "I will explain this to Sengoku later. Now we will set sail immediately and return to Marineford." The students looked at each other, then nodded and started to act according to Zephyr's instructions. After everyone left, Zephyr praised Air, "Thanks to you this time, otherwise I would definitely not be his opponent in my current situation. I will explain it to Sengoku and ask for credit for you." Air leaned his chair against the railing of the deck, waved casually and said, "I just came over on a whim out of curiosity to have a look. I didn't expect that I actually met a powerful guy. I can only say it was all luck." Zephyr just smiled and said, "Whatever you say, I'm going back to the cabin to rest." After that, he got up and walked into the cabin. "That's right." He suddenly turned his head and looked at Air's beggar and said with a fake smile, "Although your posture is cool, if you look like this, others will think you are a pervert." After that, he laughed and left. Chapter 56 New Subordinates. After returning to the room and changing out of his clothes that were almost exposed, Air washed himself and lay down on the bed. System, open the panel. Ding tilde. Nefertari D. Air. Sex, male. Age, 13. Height, 174. Personal abilities, Constitution S, 121 50,000. Swordsmanship A, 1,320 30,000. Physical skills A, 1,532 30,000. Haki, armament Hakire 425 30,000. Observation Hakire 532 30,000. Conquerors Hakib 2011 10,000. Skill moves, Shaver, 9,217 10,000. Moonwalk, 8,584 10,000. Tempest Kick, 8,847 10,000. Finger Pistol, 8,051 10,000. Iron Bodic, 4,643 5,000. Paper Arts, 4,221 5,000. Devil Fruit, Dragon Fruit S, 109 50,000. Experience points, 60,006. Fusionable Fruits, 1. Overall evaluation, S, downstream Shikai Bukai level. What's left from before, plus Lao Shan this time. I didn't expect to have more than 60,000 experience points. More than 60,000 years of experience would be enough to upgrade one of his physique core fruits to SS level, but in this case, he was afraid that his other abilities would not be able to keep up. Seeing the experience on the data panel, Air was a little confused. After thinking about it, he finally made up his mind to increase the fruit's ability to SS first. As for the rest, at worst, he would then go crazy to catch pirates and brush them all up. Just do it when you think of it, and with a thought, the Fire Dragon fruit successfully came from S level to SS, 250,000. Suddenly, Air decided that he had better control over the fruit. As he stretched out his hand, the temperature of the flame in his palm became even hotter. Damn it, why has the SS upgrade experience increased so much? You're screwing up the system. Ding S level is the limit for normal people, while SS and above are the category of monsters, and the required experience will increase. There was nothing the system could do. After cursing a few words, Air added the remaining 10,005 experience points to the weapon color, and then closed the panel with satisfaction. Lying on the bed, silently thinking about gaining an ability again. He had considered it before. Referring to the original work, the ones that best fit his ideas are, Anil's Thunder Fruit, the Fantasy Beast Vampire Fruit in a Corner of Sleepy Town, and Golden Lion's Lion Fruit, etc. These are all excellent fruits that are very helpful to Air, especially the vampire fruit. That is the best of the best that can gain a long life and bring people back to youth. Unfortunately, even Air doesn't know the exact location of this fruit. I can only look for it slowly in the future. As for the Golden Lion, this guy has been floating in the sky over a certain sea area since he escaped from prison, and he couldn't be found for a while. Only Enel, this guy is supposed to have just become the new god of Angel Island, just by heading to Magic Valley Town on Gaia Island. Then he can turn into a dragon and fly up to find him. Thinking of this, Air made up his mind that when he returned, he must go to Sky Island to kill Enel, the unlucky thing. While he was thinking, there was a knock on the door of the room. Air opened his perception after seeing and hearing, and when he saw it was them, he directly asked them to come in. Ain and Bins pushed open the door and entered. Looking at Air lying on the bed, he silently walked to his bed and sat down. Seeing the two of them like this, Air knew that they were worried, so he asked, "What's the matter? You're all depressed?" After being quiet for a while, Ain said in a low tone, "Air, do you think we are useless? We have been training for so long, but we can't get involved in today's battle at all." Binsey on the side also nodded sadly and remained silent with a depressed expression. Hearing this, Air didn't know how to comfort them, so he could only sigh and encourage, "It's okay, I don't blame you. After all, you are just students who have just graduated from the training camp, and you still have a long time to come. As long as you keep exercising, I believe that sooner or later you will become the pillar of marine and become a famous strong man on the sea." After hearing his comfort, Ain pouted unhappily and complained in a low voice, "You are obviously younger than me, but you talk like an old man." Air spread his hands helplessly. "You came here to seek comfort first. I have fulfilled my duties, and you still want to ridicule me. It's really heartless." Ain smiled and suddenly felt a lot more comfortable. At this time, Bin said, "Air, you are now the base commander of G-34. After we graduate, let us follow you." After hearing what he said, Ain nodded in agreement. Air was stunned and asked in confusion, "What are you doing with me? Besides, it's not up to me to decide where you go after graduation." Bins looked at him and said firmly, "I want to follow you and learn how to become stronger. I will capture powerful pirates with you, exercise my own strength, and strive to learn Haki as soon as possible. As for the assignment issue, I will ask Teacher's effort to help transfer me to your ship." Having never seen Bins look so serious before, Air couldn't help but be touched. Looking at Ain, who was looking at him with the same burning eyes, he nodded and agreed. "No problem, I agree." The two immediately smiled and stood up to salute. "Thank you, Colonel Air. Please give me your advice in the future." Hey, don't be so serious." Air was confused by their appearance and said funny. Ain shook his head and said stubbornly, "This is not allowed. You will be our commander from now on. This is the minimum rule." "Okay, whatever you want." "Then, Colonel, please continue to rest. We will leave first." "Get lost." He picked up a pillow and threw it at the two of them. The two of them smiled and left as if running away. Chapter 57, a place where all men understand. After several days of sailing, everyone returned to the headquarters smoothly. "I'm finally back." Air jumped off the boat and stretched greatly. During this period of time, he was wandering on the sea every day without encountering a single pirate, but it frightened him to death. "Yes, after sailing on the sea for so long, I haven't even taken a proper shower, and my body stinks." Ain smelled the clothes on his body and said disgustedly, "Sniff sniff tilde." Air leaned over and smelled it. He smelled nothing but a refreshing fragrance, and couldn't help but complain, "Miss, after so many days, there has never been a day when you haven't wiped your body, and you still have dozens of changes of clothes with you. You're looking at Bins and I, we're almost moldy, and the teacher doesn't allow us to take a shower, saying we're wasting precious fresh water on the ship." "That's it, you have the nerve to complain." Ain blushed, pushed his face away, put his hands on his hips and said angrily, "It's normal for girls to like to be clean. I also worked so hard to steal this water from a pirate ship. What do I want to do? Just do it." After a cut, Air ignored her, put his arm around Bins's shoulders, and whispered in his ear, "Hey, Bins, let's go to that place to have some fun, just relax." Bins's eyes lit up and he asked in a low voice, "You mean the place that the seniors often mention?" "That's right. How about it? Are you going or not?" "Go, of course." The two looked at each other, showed lewd smiles, and laughed. Ain, who was thrown aside, looked at the two muttering people and asked in confusion, "What are you talking about? You are smiling so strangely." It's nothing. Bins and I plan to go back and take a shower first, and then we will meet at the old place in the evening." "Yes, that's it. Ain, let's go first." After saying that, the two of them ran away in a hurry, leaving Ain alone in confusion. "Humphrey, these two bastards left me here alone." After cursing, Ain left angrily. In Marineford Commercial Street, in a remote alley, Bin swallowed and said nervously, Are we going in like this?" Seeing his unsatisfactory look, scolded him. "What are you afraid of? This is a regular store with a business license issued by the headquarters. There is nothing to worry about." That's what he said, but he himself was very nervous now. His calves were as heavy as lead and he couldn't move his legs at all. At this time, two old Marines walked by them with their arms around each other. Seeing the two people standing at the door hesitating, as veterans, they immediately understood. One of them said jokingly, "Hey, two young guys, are you too scared to go in?" Another person also quickly said, "Hey, don't say that. These two guys are still young, so it's normal for them not to dare to enter. After all, this is a place only men can enter." After saying that, the two laughed, waved to them and went in. "Damn it, I can bear this. I have never been afraid in this long life." Couldn't bear it after being provoked by the two of them, so he walked inside. Binzi also puffed up his chest and said angrily, "Lozi is a genuine man, how dare you look down on me?" He quickly followed after him. As soon as I entered the door, I saw two rows of young ladies in cool clothes standing respectfully on the left and right. When they saw a guest coming in, they immediately bent down and shouted to them, "Welcome." Bins had never seen such an exciting scene before. He quickly grabbed Air's arm nervously and couldn't even say a word. Fortunately, Air had seen the big world and quickly regained his composure. He just nodded slightly and led Bins to the front desk. The young lady at the front desk saw the two of them and asked enthusiastically, "Two distinguished guests, do you need anything?" Air, who had already inquired about the information from his previous senior, pretended to be expert and said, "Help us prepare 2 private rooms and arrange the best VIP package." Upon hearing about the VIP set meal, the young lady became even more enthusiastic. She quickly walked out of the counter and led the two of them deeper into the store. Air and the other two followed her silently. When they came to the 2 adjacent bedrooms, the young lady opened the doors one by one, smiled and said to the two of them, "Please take a rest for a while, the service staff will be here soon." Air smiled, winked at Bins, and stepped into the room. The decoration in the room is Japanese style, with a large bed for resting, a coffee table and soft cushions for sitting on the side. Opening the sliding door, there was a separated outdoor hot spring outside the house. Air walked over and stretched out his hand to test it. The water temperature was just right. At this time, there was a knock on the door. 2 young and beautiful women, wearing kimonos, said sorry and opened the door and walked in. When the two saw Air, they bowed respectfully and introduced themselves. "Hello, guest, I am Xiaogwang." "I'm Xiaowu." "Next, we will help you change your clothes and take a bath." Chapter 58 Catch the Adulterer. A few minutes later, Air sat on a low stool by the hot spring wrapped in a bath towel. The two women gently wet Air's body and applied shower gel. "Start cleaning his body." "Xiaogwang, guest, your muscles are great. You must exercise regularly." "Xiaowu, I saw that the guest was wearing a cloak that only lieutenants wear. I didn't expect that the guest would have a successful career at such a young age. He will definitely have a bright future." Listening to the compliments of the two girls, Air couldn't help but said happily, "It's not bad. I was lucky enough to capture a few pirates." "You are so humble. Only with an excellent marine like you as our guest can we live a peaceful life." Yes, everything is thanks to you Marine Samas." Just like that, Air finished the bath under the compliments of the two beauties, and then happily soaked in the hot spring. While enjoying the comfort and relaxation of the hot spring, a beautiful woman massages and dances for you. Of course, apart from these, Air did nothing else. After the whole process, it was already evening. Air smiled and waved goodbye to the two beauties, and chatted with Bins about the attentive service in the store, and made an appointment to come back next time. Just like that, the two of them laughed and opened the door and walked out. "Air, Bins, did you have fun?" A cold voice came from the side, and the two people who were so excited just now suddenly broke out in a layer of cold sweat. The two of them turned to look at the same time, only to see Ain with a cold face, arms folded across his chest, looking at the two of them with murderous intent, especially towards Air. Seeing this situation, Bin suddenly enlightened. He made a fist with his left hand and knocked it on the palm of his right hand. He suddenly said in realization, "I suddenly remember that I have something else to do." "You geese can talk, I'm leaving first." After saying that, he ran wildly, even shaving, and disappeared in front of the two of them in the blink of an eye. Air opened his mouth wide and stared at his disappearing back in stunned silence, cursing fiercely in his heart. "Son of a bitch, let's sell Lozi now. You're an unloyal thing. Just wait for me and see how I deal with you when I get back." "Ha, you're the only one left now. Please explain it to me." Ain snorted coldly and said with an attitude of "I'll see what you can do with your quibbles." Air smiled awkwardly, feeling as if he had been caught and raped by his wife. After scanning the surroundings and seeing that someone had noticed, Air quickly pulled her and ran into an uninhabited alley. After entering the alley and using his sense of sight and color to make sure that no one was there, Air said, "Ain, don't get me wrong, we just went for a massage in a hot spring bath, and we didn't do anything else." After shaking off her hand and still holding her own, Ain said in amusement, "You haven't done anything yet." "But I heard that this store is full of young and beautiful beauties who specialize in seducing men." She was a little embarrassed, but she spoke anyway. Air quickly retorted and explained for herself, who said that this is obviously a regular massage parlor, and her family has a genuine business license. Ain looked at him suspiciously and asked suspiciously, "Really? Then why did Bins get scared away when he saw me?" After greeting Bins dozens of times in his heart, Air laughed and said, "Didn't you listen to what he said? He really has something else to do." After a pause, Air said seriously, "Besides, didn't he create an opportunity for us to be alone together?" Ain blushed, lowered his head and said shyly, "What are you talking about? Don't make such a joke." Air shamelessly held her hand, leaned close to her ear and teased, "Then why were you jealous just now? But you looked quite cute when you were angry." "Idiot, I'm not jealous." "Go away, I'm going back to rest." Ain's cheeks were burning, and he quickly wanted to shake off his hand and escape back to the dormitory. Air could not fulfill her wish. Not only did he hold his hand tighter, he simply closed his eyes and kissed her red lips. Matilda. Ain's whole body was stiff, and he stood there blankly without resisting. Steam seemed to evaporate from his overheated brain. Ain, whose brain was down, was at a loss as to what to do. But gradually, her expression softened. She hugged Air and responded. After a long time, the lips parted. Air raised his head and recalled the feeling just now, and couldn't help but lick the corner of his mouth. Ain, who was originally shy, looked up secretly and happened to see his movements. She quickly grabbed his face in shame and anger and shouted to stop him. "No, this is too shameful." Air, whose cheeks were pulled, raised his hands and said incoherently, "I understand, please let go of your hands first." Only then did Ain react, let go of his hand, rubbed the corners of his clothes and said angrily, "Don't do this again." "What does this mean?" "I don't understand." After saying that, he laughed evilly, took her hand and ran out of the alley. "Fool!" Ain cursed angrily, but did not resist and allowed him to pull him. With a smile that could not be concealed, he followed him out of the alley. That night, many people saw a young couple walking through the streets, and the whole street was filled with their laughter. Chapter 59 Little Brother. In the next few days, Air accompanied his young girlfriend Ain, who was already in a relationship, to relax in Marineford. During this period, Air also found an opportunity to take the damaged Chindong to a knife shop, where it was repaired and maintained. Overall, life was going well. It was a bitter experience for good brother Bins. That night, when he saw the two of them coming back hand in hand, he still couldn't accept it. What made him even more sad was that from that day on, the two of them were completely stuck together, inseparable all day long, making him seem like an outsider. Fortunately, the painful days have finally passed. On this day, Air was called to the marshal's office. After receiving a meal of praise and encouragement from Sengoku, Air successfully returned to the dormitory with the transfer order of Ain and Bins to join the G34 branch. Temporary dormitories allocated later. Air immediately shared the good news with Ain, and the two hugged each other and celebrated, causing Bins, who had just opened the door to come in, to move forward or backward, which was very torturous. "You too, I understand how you feel. But you also have to look at the occasion. You make me very unconscious and feel a bit redundant." Bins walked around them and sat on the bed, saying with a grimace. Letting go of the beauty in his arms, Air looked at the light bulb and said angrily, "What are you doing? If you don't like it, you can find one. There are so many young girls in this department, just go after whoever you like." Ain also looked at him funny and said in agreement, "I see there are several beautiful junior girls in the academy. I can help you contact them." Listen, this is human talk. If Losey had the looks of this guy Air, he would have been single a long time ago, and he would still be like this. With an angry snort, Bins took his new military uniform and left angrily. He didn't want to stay in this miserable place for a moment. Seeing that the troublesome guy was gone, Air immediately became dishonest again. He grabbed Ain's little hand and wanted to do something bad, but Ain didn't give him this chance. After pushing him away, he held his clothes and put on his shoes and planned to leave. "It's very late now. I have to go back and rest. Remember to get up early tomorrow." "Hey, no. You're leaving now. Shouldn't you be staying? Let's talk about life and the future together, and then you half-heartedly want to spend the night here?" She patted the dishonest Air in shame. She smiled, lowered her head and kissed Air on the mouth. She was taller than Air now, touched his head and teased, "Little brother, you are still young, wait 2 years before talking about that kind of thing." After saying that, she covered her mouth and left with a smile. Air was so shocked that he sat down on the bed and secretly swore in his heart that in a few years, he would make her look good. The door was opened again, and Bins walked in proudly. He glanced at Air on the ground with disdain and said mockingly, "Little brother, you haven't grown up yet, so you should follow the example of adults in picking up girls. Let's wait until you grow up." Pins, who was not far from the door just now, happened to hear Ain's words. Finally, he had the opportunity to laugh at her, and he would not let it go so easily. Air turned over and jumped up from the ground. It was okay to be effed by Ain. Now even this guy dares to laugh at himself. "Look at my electro-poisonous dragon diamond." "I'm sorry, I was wrong." After playing around for a while, the two fell asleep contentedly. Pins, "I didn't." They are full of expectations for the days to come. The next day, jingle bell bell tilde, jingle bell bell tilde. Nasha reluctantly opened her eyes under the gentle call of the alarm clock. He stood up from the bed in a daze and went to the bathroom to wash up. After spending hundreds of millions of hours dressing herself up beautifully, Nasha looked at the time. "Oops. The appointed time is coming soon and I'm going to be late." She quickly changed her clothes, put on her coat of justice and ran to the meeting point. Fortunately, I'm not late. But why hasn't Air come yet? When they arrived at the agreed place, Nasha took a few breaths and looked at her watch, and said strangely, "Hello, are you Captain Nasha?" A pleasant voice came, and Nasha quickly turned around and followed the sound. I saw a young female marine, also wearing a coat of justice, coming behind me at some point and looking at me with a smile. Hello, I'm Captain Nasha, who are you?" Nasha asked doubtfully. Having just been promoted to captain, she proudly puffed out her chest when she said this. Ain looked at the girl in front of him who was similar to his own age, gave a respectful military salute, and introduced himself. "Captain Nasha, I'm Ain, Lieutenant Junior Grade, newly transferred to the G34 branch. Please give me your advice in the future." "Yes, please give me some advice." Nasha was stunned, and quickly realized that the person in front of her was one of the two newcomers who were informed 2 days ago that she would join the G34 branch with her. After some more courtesy and small talk, Nasha realized that she and the other newcomer were classmates in the same class of Air. "I just graduated not long ago." While chatting, Ain suddenly asked, "You're Air's adjutant, so after getting along with him during this time, what do you think of him?" Chapter 60 Demon Valley Town. Hearing this question, Nasha was a little at a loss at first and looked around. Then he felt relieved and said coyly, "Colonel Air is a very good person, strong and has firm justice in his heart. Although he is usually a little irregular, when he encounters trouble, he can often make calm judgments, appease people and solve problems. Just like my first second-rate." Nasha said a lot, her tone full of adoration and admiration for Air. If Air were here, he would doubt whether the person Nasha was talking about was him. Ain smiled on the surface and agreed with her words, listening to her words and letting out a few compliments from time to time. In fact, alarm bells were ringing in her heart, and she wondered if she should find an opportunity to give Air a serious warning. The two chatted for a while, and after half an hour past the meeting time, Air and Bins blamed each other for being late. As soon as they arrived at the place, they saw that Ain and Nasha had already arrived, and the two disheveled people immediately apologized. "Sorry, we're late." "It's all his fault." The two of them pointed at each other and said in unison. Nasha looked at them amusedly, and said in a considerate manner, "It's okay. Now that we're here, Colonel Air, we should set off." Air nodded, straightened his clothes and took the lead onto the warship. During this period, Bins was introduced to Nasha by the way, so that they could get to know each other. On the deck, the soldiers were already lined up neatly, waiting for Air's orders. Air called Deb, the navigator, and asked him, "Did you get the permanent pointer I asked you to prepare?" Deb nodded, took out the small hourglass-shaped thing and said, "I got it. This is what I applied for from the headquarters." Patting him on the shoulder with satisfaction, Air came to the bow and said loudly, "Follow the pointer, guys." Next stop, Gaia Island. "Yes, Captain." Everyone was neatly guarded by Kaido. Even Ain and Bins were no exception. Deb directed the soldiers to unload the anchor, raise the sail, and control the warship to set sail again from the port. That's right, Air did not plan to return directly to Alabaster this time. Instead, he decided to go directly to Gaia Island, and then board Sky Island to obtain his second ability. This was a decision he made after careful selection. First of all, in terms of abilities, Thunder Fruit has amazing destructive power and is only as fast as Sparkling Fruit. Most importantly, Thunder Fruit can greatly enhance the range of Esper observation haki. There was no way, even though he was very covetous of Whitebeard's Shock Fruit, he still had to have the strength to defeat Whitebeard. On the contrary, Enel, a guy who has never seen the world, only needs Ed to catch him off guard and not give him a chance to react. The chance of getting Thunder Fruit is still very good, so he directly gave up his other abilities and aimed directly at Enel. On this day, Demon Valley Town was as usual. Pirates could be seen wandering everywhere, and from time to time, two groups of pirates would fight over quarrels. The people passing by were not afraid at all. Instead, they cheered and discussed with their friends who would win. At this moment, intensive artillery fire suddenly came from the distant port. At first, people didn't take it seriously, thinking that it was probably another group of pirates fighting. But as the sound of cannons got closer and closer, and at the same time a large number of pirates ran over as if fleeing from the port, everyone realized that something was wrong. A big man grabbed the passers-by who were running by and asked in confusion, "What happened? Why are you running?" The passerby threw away his hand and said with a horrified expression, "Marine is here. It's the recently famous monster colonel, the Fire Dragon Heir. Run quickly, or we will all be caught." After saying that, he ran away without looking back. The big man stiffly turned his head to look at his companions. The two looked at each other and quickly followed the fleeing crowd. Heir leisurely watched Ain and Bin's killing everyone in the town, and then glanced at the experience that jumped from time to time. He picked up the wine glass with satisfaction and took a sip. "Capitalists don't deceive me. Tools are easy to use. It seems that I need to train more powerful subordinates. In this case, I don't need to do anything, and the experience will continue to come." Thinking happily, Heir put down the wine glass, jumped off the boat, and led a group of soldiers to step over the corpses of the garbage and walked into the town. Hey, see, Marine is so afraid. Isn't there even a good person in this town? Heir glanced at all the closed shops on both sides of the street and complained helplessly. Ain followed him and smiled when he heard his complaints and said, "I heard it just now. They all said you were a monster colonel and gave you the nickname Fire Dragon. After recognizing you, they were all scared away." Heir stopped, looked up in a certain direction, and said, "Fire Dragon? That's really appropriate. But these trash are not just cowards, there are also a few idiots." As soon as he finished speaking, several pirates jumped up from the roof and slashed at him with long knives. "Fire Dragon Heir, Lozi has accepted your head." Chapter 61 Sky Island. Looking at him speechlessly, Nasha, Ain, and Bins used their own methods to deal with these idiots without Heir taking action. A sailor with great insight handed over a bounty order and reported, "Sir Colonel, these people are members of the Flying Bull Pirates, headed by Captain Big. The bounty is 30 million. Are you kidding? There is a reward of 30 million yuan for this kind of strength?" Heir took the wanted notice and looked through it. The marine soldier glanced at the people lying on the ground in disgust, and explained, "The reward of 30 million is not because of his strength, but because these people commit crimes by burning, killing, looting, and so the headquarters has increased that reward." Heir nodded clearly and looked at the garbage. He ordered the marines, "Kill them all and drag the bodies to the entrance of the town and hang them up." After saying that, he turned around and left. "Yes." The sailor saluted, asked someone to take photos of those with bounties, and then dragged their bodies to do the work. Heir then wandered around the town and finally found an open tavern in the center of the street. After looking around for a few times, Heir walked in calmly. "Welcome. I didn't expect the famous Fire Dragon Heir to come to my shop." The boss, who looked to be 4 or 50 years old, warmly welcomed Heir after he came in. Heir sat at the bar, ordered a glass of whiskey, looked at the boss and asked calmly, "What a surprise." Everyone else in the town ran away when they heard Marine was coming. "But boss, you don't seem to be afraid of us at all." The boss smiled, took out a bottle of whiskey and poured it for Heir, and said, "They are pirates, wanted criminals, and gangsters. Of course they will run away when they see Marine. And I am just an ordinary bar owner. Of course I am not afraid when I see you." Heir took a sip of wine, smiled and said nothing. "By the way, Mr. Heir, I wonder what's the matter with you coming to a small town like this where you don't care?" the boss asked casually while wiping his wineglass. "Really, you just started to inquire about information after just a few words of conversation. But it's okay to tell you. The reason I came here this time is to visit Sky Island." Sky Island? When the boss heard this word, his mouth opened wide in surprise, wondering if there was something wrong with his ears. "Are you kidding me? Sky Island is just a legend and does not exist at all." After finishing the wine in one gulp, Heir put down the glass and stood up. He said with a smile, "I have told you the purpose anyway. It has nothing to do with me whether you believe it or not. By the way, remember to say hello to Doflamingo for me." After saying that, he ignored the boss's surprised look and turned around and left. After leaving the tavern, Heir looked up at the sky, looked at the white clouds in the sky, and began to think silently. "By the way, the side effects of my fruit have been eliminated by the system. I should be able to fly directly over the sea of clouds and directly to Sky Island, right?" After thinking about it, Heir decided to give it a try first. He looked at Nasha beside him and ordered her, "After I leave, you continue to clean up the remaining pirates on the island, with Ain and Bins assisting you." "Yes." The three of them nodded in agreement to the order. Ain looked at him and asked worriedly, "Is there any danger on Sky Island? Are you okay alone?" She didn't care whether the legend of Sky Island was true or not, but Heir had said it, so Sky Island must exist. "She is just afraid that there are unknown and powerful enemies on Sky Island, and Heir may encounter some danger." Giving her a reassuring look, Heir said comfortingly, "Don't worry, don't you know my strength yet? Except for a few monsters from New World, no one else in this sea can threaten me at all." After saying that, Heir waved to them and jumped into the sky with a strong effort of his legs. After reaching a certain height on the moonwalk, Heir let out a dragon roar. In Marine's admiration and in the frightened eyes of the pirates hiding in unknown corners, Air transformed into a 100-meter-long giant dragon, flapped its wings and disappeared into the sky. Air rose vertically into the sky like rocket. The powerful physique is even more exaggerated with the addition of fruits. After only a few minutes, Air crossed the 7,000-meter White Sea and continued flying towards higher ground. 8,000 meters, 9,000 meters, 10,000 meters. Boom tilde, with a loud noise. The entire God's Island Apiado shook. In the palace, Enlil and the 4 priests under him, who were discussing something, subconsciously opened their heart nets to sense it. The 4 priests sensed for a long time and found nothing wrong. Only Enlil, who was strengthened by thunder fruit and could cover the entire Sky Island, discovered something was wrong. "What is that? Some kind of large beast that can fly?" he murmured in confusion. Just below Apiado, the island of gods, Air's upper body was stuck in the soil, and his lower body was struggling with his legs. After using up the strength of 9 cows and 2 tigers, Air finally pulled himself out of the ground. Damn, I flew too fast and crashed directly into Apiado. Fortunately, no one saw me, otherwise I would have been completely embarrassed. Shaking his head and shaking off the dirt on his head, Air complained to himself, then circled the land and continued to fly upward. Chapter 62 Thunder Fruit. In Enlil's perception, a huge winged creature was flying upward quickly against the ground of the Island of Gods. Feeling very novel, he turned into a bolt of lightning with curiosity and rushed towards the direction where Air was coming up. With a flash of lightning, Enlil's figure appeared at the edge of the Island of Gods. He looked down at the sea of clouds below, expecting to see the appearance of this unknown creature as soon as possible. Soon, with a loud roar, a majestic and handsome behemoth covered with fiery red scales appeared in front of him. As early as the first time Enlil arrived, Air sensed someone. Although I don't know who is here, but since he lives on an island with soil, he must be either Enlil or one of his priests. Sure enough, Air took a closer look and saw a strange man with a white turban, bare upper body, earlobes hanging down to his chest, and a thunder drum on his back. Who else could it be but Enlil, the self-proclaimed god? "You are the strange creature that just crashed into the Island of Gods? You look very harky. How about becoming my pet? If you don't say anything, I will treat it as your consent." Enlil looked at Air and said to himself with satisfaction. But what he didn't notice was that as he finished speaking, Air's dragon face turned completely dark. "You mean, you saw the way I just crashed into the ground? You still want Lozi to be your pet?" Air opened his mouth and roared angrily. "Hey! Talk." Enlil's eyes bulged. His chin hit the ground, and he shouted in disbelief. Air didn't waste any time. He twisted around and swung his more than 30-meter-long dragon tail, and whipped him hard. After finally regaining his composure, Enlil looked at the giant tail hitting him, crossed his arms and said in a disdainful tone, "Even if I can talk, I'm still just a beast. As a god, how could I be ... Poof?" Before he could finish his words, Air struck him hard with an angry blow. Enlil turned into a meteor and flew hundreds of meters away while vomiting blood. Air flapped his dragon wings and fell from the sky, stomping heavily on him with a weapon-like kick. A crisp sound of flesh exploding reached his ears. Air raised his paw and saw a puddle of meat sauce sticking to his paw in a disgusting manner. Rubbing on the ground in disgust, Air transformed back into his human form, walked over to the pit and looked at it, and began to call the system. "Hey, system, this guy is so bad, can he still absorb Thunder Fruit's abilities?" Ding. Okay. Does the host want to absorb the Thunder Fruit ability? Bullshit, suck it. Ding. Start absorbing. Absorbing successfully. Fusion for host. Fusion successful. Bala. Air's body suddenly flashed with arcs of electricity, and as the system prompted that the fusion was successful, his whole body exploded with lightning. The crackling thunder continued, and Air seemed to turn into a real thunder and lightning. Looking at his hands, a strange feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart. He instinctively reached out and pointed at the big tree not far away, and shouted, 100,000 volts. With a bang, a bolt of lightning as thick as a finger flew out from the palm of his hand and struck the tree, leaving a large black hole in the tree. So handsome. Apart from anything else, the visual effect of this fruit is definitely impressive. Air started experimenting in the forest as if he had acquired a new toy. He used the more than 7,000 experience points he had left to push Thunder Fruit to B level. It also combines the abilities of Fire Dragon Fruit and Thunder Fruit to form a new Thunder Flame Dragon mode. Just when he was getting carried away, the huge commotion he caused attracted 4 God-tier officers under Enlil. Hearing the sound of electricity in the distance, the 4 people immediately accelerated in that direction. When they arrived, they did not find Enlil. Instead, they saw a stranger without wings, looking at them with a smile. The most incredible thing is that the hand of the man in front of him is beating with thunder and lightning that only God can control. The 4 people suddenly felt something was wrong, but Ohm, who was bald, wearing sunglasses and holding a sword, still mustered up the courage and asked loudly, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the island of God without permission? This is God's territory. Aren't you afraid of God's punishment?" Looking at the weird foursome in front of him, Air smiled and pointed at the pit with his thumb, teasing, "God, are you talking about the one with long ears? If you go to the pit and work hard now, you might be able to piece it together with some effort." "Asshole, you are disrespectful to God. I must kill you," Ohm said, but his eyes subconsciously looked into the pit. Because he was standing on a tree, he could clearly see the situation in the pit at a glance. Seeing the meat paste inside, he just frowned in disgust. But when he saw a tattered snare drum and bloomers that were stained red by blood but could still be roughly distinguished, he suddenly began to panic. After swallowing, Ohm turned his head blankly and glanced at the other three priests. The four of them looked at each other in horror, and secretly made up their minds through their eyes. Chapter 63 Gold. No need to communicate. The four people immediately dispersed and ran away. There was no way, even such a powerful god was defeated by the people in front of him, let alone a few weaklings like himself. Moreover, several people had clearly seen just now that this man without wings can also control thunder and lightning, which is not too scary. In other words, from Enel to this unknown man now, the common feature between them is that they have no wings. The four of them ran away full of doubts. Could it be said that the power of God to control thunder and lightning can only be obtained by those without wings? What they don't know is that a legend is gradually spreading on the future Sky Island that people without wings can gain the power of gods. Therefore, for those Sky Island children who were born without wings, the Sky Island people not only did not have the previous disgust and rejection, but even received extra care. Of course, this is just a later story. Time returned to the present. Air ignored the four people who were escaping, but spread his wings and flew higher above the island of gods. Air, who was flying high in the sky, glanced around, and suddenly a bright light caught his attention. "Where is it?" After flapping its wings and accelerating, Air came to the light. "Haha, I found the legendary golden bell. It's really big and scary when you look at it up close." After sighing, Air stepped forward and observed carefully. In addition to the golden gold, he discovered the historical text at first sight. But he didn't have much interest in it. He just knocked on it out of curiosity and ignored it. Instead, the words left by Pirate King Roger caught his attention. The Pirate King has already left a message, so it's not too much for me to write something more on it. With this in mind, Air wrote in Chinese on the side, "The truth lies, raffle full of bad taste. Neferutari Air, words." I don't know if Robin will be confused when he sees it in the future, scratching his head and trying to figure out the meaning of these words. After thinking about that scene, Air laughed out loud. Let's get down to business first. Hey, I won't move on the golden clock, and I won't be polite about the pillars next to it. Anyway, as long as it doesn't affect its normal ringing." Air rubbed his hands, put his hands on the gold excitedly, and activated his fruit ability. Metallogy. As the electric arc flashed on his hand, except for the golden clock and the engraved wall, all the other gold decorations melted and shaped into a huge square gold brick. "This piece is enough for now. I'll pick up the remaining gold when I'm free next time." Thinking in his heart, Air transformed into a dragon, hugged a gold brick that was almost half his size, and returned to King High with fluttering wings. Not long after he left, Ganfu, the former god of Sky Island, rode his mount, the strange Pegasus that ate the horse fruit, to the vicinity of the island of gods. After hovering in the sky for a while, Ganfu, who was hesitating whether to go in to investigate, suddenly saw several servants of Enel escaping from the island in a panic. Ganfu frowned and immediately swooped down, stopping these servants to ask about the situation on the island. Seeing that it was the appointed god, a few ordinary servants did not dare to hide anything and honestly told everything they knew. When he heard that Enel was dead and that his priests had packed up and ran away, Ganfu was also shocked. Regardless of anything else, he quickly flew into the island on Pegasus to investigate carefully. What was puzzling was that he searched around the island and couldn't find the new god without wings that the servants said. Ganfu reluctantly stopped his search. He originally wanted to have a chat with the mysterious new god to see what kind of person he was. But now the other party is nowhere to be found, and Sky Island's throne is inexplicably vacant. Now he has a headache. Enel is dead, and the new god is not here. If the Sandians, the original inhabitants of the island of gods, knew this news, they would definitely want to retake the island. The residents of Sky Island will definitely refuse. The two sides are expected to start another war, and no one knows how many people will bleed and die for this land. Ganfu did not want to see the outbreak of war. He was determined to let the Sandians and Sky Islanders coexist peacefully and jointly protect this homeland. Thinking of this, he urged the Pegasus on his crotch and headed towards Angel Island where Sky Islanders lived. Not to mention the series of changes that occurred in Sky Island due to Air's arrival, the goal was achieved. Air, holding a large piece of gold, was free-falling at high speed towards Gaia Island below. Passing through the last cloud and mist, Air finally saw the blue sea. In the sea, Gaia Island, which is as big as a sesame seed, also appears in the eye. The dragon roars! The extremely penetrating dragon roar spread through the air into the ears of all marines. In the port, Marine on the warship subconsciously looked up to the sky and saw a small dot shining like a star in the sky. A Marine soldier put his hand on his forehead and looked towards the sky. He asked his companions in confusion, can you see the stars on Gaia Island during the day? The companion shrugged and walked to the ship's storage room with a box of food in his arms. Maybe. This is the Grand Line. It's not surprising to see any weird sights. Makes sense. Chapter 64 The Golden Land is real. Hai Bing agreed with his words, but he did not put down his raised hand, but continued to look at the stars in the sky. But as time went by, his expression gradually changed from the initial novelty to confusion, and then gradually turned into fear. He put down his hand, turned around and shouted to his companions on the boat, "Oh no, there is a meteor falling towards us from the sky. Hurry up and get to a safe place." Following his voice, the Marines on the ship suddenly became confused. The lookout quickly raised his telescope and looked at the meteors in the sky. When he saw Meteor's true face, he breathed a sigh of relief. "Idiot, it's Colonel Air who's back." "Calm down." All the Marines were stunned and looked at the sailor who had lied about military information with murderous eyes. Then they quickly found their seats and lined up neatly in a square formation. Not long after, as a gust of wind raged, Air stopped above the warship. Air, who had seen what just happened through his eyes, glanced at these embarrassing things unhappily, and said in a deep voice, "Idiots, please spread out. Didn't you see that I was holding something?" After hearing the superior's reprimand, everyone did not dare to refute and quickly dispersed. It was at this moment that everyone looked up and saw what Air was holding in the claws of the dragon. Marines who thought they had seen the world all opened their mouths in surprise, looking at what was in front of them in disbelief. "Here, what is this? Could it be gold?" "Yes, it should be, but it should only be coated with a layer of gold on the outside. It can't be the whole thing." "Is that so?" "Phew, it scared me. I thought it was pure gold." "Ha, I see, it's gold-plated." The Marines discussed it for a while, and all came to the conclusion that this was just a gold-plated, scary-looking thing, but with 10 or 20 million bli, it was worthy of the sky. After hearing their speculation, Air did not explain much. It was best to misunderstand. After the news of the province spread, it attracted the attention of some thoughtful people. The remaining gold on Sky Island is already his property in Air's heart, and he will not allow others to covet it. "Why are you still standing? Why don't you go back to your post?" Air transformed back into his human form and stood on the gold bricks to scold the onlookers. Everyone was shocked and quickly dispersed. "Wait a minute." Air called out to them again, pointed to the gold bricks at his feet and ordered, "This thing is too conspicuous. Go find a piece of cloth to cover it." "Yes." The sailors quickly obeyed the order and did so. Air didn't care about them. He turned on his sight color and disappeared in a flash. Gaia Island is located on the other side of Magic Valley Town. Nasha, Ain, and Bins teamed up to defeat and tie up Montblanc Kulik and his Sarusan united army. Ain took several bounty lists and compared them. After confirming them, she waved her hand and told the sailors behind her, "Yes. Bring them all to the warship and wait for Colonel Air to be released." The sailors were about to step forward when a voice interrupted them. "No need, just let these guys go." "Air?" Everyone looked back and saw Air coming behind them at some point. The sailors looked at him in confusion, wondering why the colonel, who had always been merciless to pirates, suddenly showed mercy. Air ignored them and went straight to the rhombus-faced man with a chestnut on his head and said, "You are the descendant of Rolando, Montblanc Kulik, right?" Kulik looked up at the person with difficulty, spit out a mouthful of blood, and said with a forced smile, "What, even Marine wants to mock me? I have no such interest. I just happened to pass by and wanted to meet him by the way." Air squatted in front of him and said nonchalantly. Kulik was tied up with ropes, struggled to sit up, and said calmly, "Then what?" "I don't think there is anything about me that can attract the attention of the famous fire dragon." Air, smiling, Air stood up, patted his trouser legs, looked into his eyes and said, "Well, I just want to tell you that Rolando didn't lie. The Golden Land really exists." After saying that, he put his hands in his pockets, turned around and left. Kulik's eyes widened, looking at Air's back. He quickly wanted to chase after him and stop him, but he forgot that he was still tied up. Just when he wanted to get up, his body fell down due to lack of coordination and fell back to the ground. He raised his head and shouted at Air's back, "What do you mean by this? Speak clearly." Air didn't look back. He just stretched out his hand and pointed to the sky, then waved his hand and led the people away. Kulik buried his head in the ground and couldn't help crying. His subordinates, the apes and orangutans, saw their boss in this state and quickly came forward to comfort him. "Boss, are you okay? What does this bastard Marine mean? What does heaven have to do with Rolando?" Listening to the comfort from his men, Kulik turned over with a smile, looked at the sky with red eyes and shouted, "Rolando, you bastard really didn't lie." Chapter 65 Fake News. Listening to the voice behind him, Air smiled. This is the romance of men. Ain, who was walking behind him, didn't hear his muttering, but asked doubtfully, "Have you finished your work? Also, why did you let those pirates go?" "Ah, The matter has been resolved. As for me, I'm just in a good mood and don't want to catch them. This is my arbitrary justice. Ain looked at his back strangely and whispered to Nasha beside him, I went to Sky Island. Is his head broken? Why did he suddenly say something strange? Nasha also felt that air was a little weird, and Kaido hesitated. Did he have an accident and break his head? Hey, you two, I heard it. Air could hear the conversation clearly without any hesitation, and he wondered whether these two guys did it on purpose. I'm sorry. Nasha apologized quickly, but Ain just snorted and pouted cutely. Without further ado, the group returned to the warship. As the warship set sail, Nasha walked up to Air with a stack of bounty orders, handed it to him and said, Air, these are the pirates we caught during this period. What do you think of how to deal with them? Air looked through it and found that there were quite a lot of pirates caught, as many as 13, and there was still a bounty for them. You must know that it has only been half a day since Air and others arrived at Gaia Island. Although the highest bounty here is only 40 million, it is still an exaggeration. So he opened his mouth and said, those who commit crimes by burning, killing, looting, etc. will be shot directly and thrown into the sea to feed the fish. If there are any leftovers, call the nearby marine branch and ask them to pick them up. Nasha patted her white rabbit and breathed a sigh of relief. This was the Air she knew. Well, according to my investigation, these people are all worthy of being shot. Then kill them quickly. These people are just a waste of food while they are still alive. Send them to hell to repent. Nasha nodded and left. After a while, a dozen pirates were escorted out of the prison by the navy. With the sound of several gunshots and the sound of falling into the water, the world lost a few pieces of garbage. What followed was another boring journey. There was nothing but the sea in his field of vision, and there were no unsighted pirates running to trouble him. During this period, Newsbird delivered a newspaper. Air took a look and found that there were reports about him. This is what it says: the marine supernova, the Fire Dragon Air, recently landed on Gaia Island. Colonel Air slaughtered a large number of pirates with iron-blooded methods, and his cruel methods were frightening. Reporters have reason to wonder whether Air, the Fire Dragon, has some unknown mental illness that prompted him to be so ruthless. I will continue to follow up on this matter, so readers are welcome to look forward to it. Air was furious when he saw this newspaper that had made up nonsense and seriously damaged his reputation. He grabbed the Newsbird and wrote all the Zuan dialect he had learned in his 2 lives on the paper, and asked the Newsbird to take it back. Within 2 days, the newspaper published an article about Air threatening and intimidating reporters. However, for the sake of fairness, justice, openness and the most rigorous authenticity of news, reporters resolutely refused to be threatened by Marine and fought against the evil Dragon Air for the sake of news justice. When Air saw this newspaper, he almost vomited blood in anger. This was not the first time that the Birdman Morgans had disgusted him, and Air wanted to kill him now. Because of this incident, Marshal Sengoku specially called to inquire about the situation. When he told Sengoku exactly what had happened, Sengoku could only comfort him with a few words but had no further words. As a result, Sea Kings, which passed the Air warship in the past 2 days, was in bad luck. The sailors shed tears silently in their hearts as they watched the boss turn into a dragon again and start electrocuting fish. Bala sizzling tilde, with a flash of electricity, a Sea Kings no smaller than a boat and countless sea fish emerged from the water with their bellies turned upside down. Looking at Air falling back on the deck, Chef Couch cautiously stepped forward and advised, Colonel, please don't eat fish today. If you eat fish every day, your brothers will almost vomit. All the sailors nodded and looked at Air expectantly. Seeing their eyes flashing with tears, Air still didn't make up his mind and agreed to Kachi's proposal. The sailors cheered and quickly sped away from the sea full of fish. Air lay back on the lounge chair unhappily, picked up the whiskey on the table and drank. Ain sat next to him with a glass of wine, looked at him and said helplessly, don't be angry, just talk to me about your thunder and lightning. Hearing Ain's question, he swallowed his breath and explained, well, you know, I am a phantom beast type user. It is reasonable to suddenly awaken the power of thunder and lightning. Is that so? That's right. Trust me. Ain tilted her head in confusion. She didn't know much about the phantom beast. Looking at Air's sincere eyes, she reluctantly accepted this statement. Chapter 66 Plan. Apart from the disturbing newspapers, the voyage went smoothly. Air and his party arrived at Alabaster at noon one day. He did not rush back to the G34 branch, but found King Cobra and chatted with him about some of his ideas. This crocodile incident is a typical example. Alabaster has many unknown secrets. If we don't have strong protection, we will be targeted sooner or later. In the study, Air sat on the sofa and said seriously. Cobra tapped his fingers on the table and asked hesitantly, is it so serious? Crocodile was just an accident. Alabaster is located in the first half of the Grand Line, and with a standing army of 600,000, almost no one dares to trouble us. You also said it was almost. I don't know where Crocodile got the information, and the target was the royal family's secret Pluton. You know, this is something that even Vivi doesn't know. Even I only knew it from Crocodile. It is hard not to suspect that there is someone behind him deliberately instigating this, Air said half-truthfully. Cobra frowned upon hearing this, but still hesitated. For his own plan, Air decided to add another fire. This time when I went to the headquarters, I spoke with the 5 elders. As soon as he said this, Cobra immediately raised his head and looked at him with a serious expression, waiting for his next words. Although it seemed that the other party was just chatting with me casually and said a few words that were not serious or serious. But when it comes to the D in my name, they seem to be a different person and are very hostile to me. After a pause, Air organized the language and continued, you also know that Nefertari is the only family among the 20 kings that has not moved to the Holy Land. In their eyes, this approach is a naked betrayal. Sighing, Cobra rubbed his temples and asked tiredly, so you suspect that the government leaked the information and deliberately allowed Crocodile to harm Alabaster, hoping to use his hand to get rid of us? Well, that's what I thought. What about you? What do you want to do? Ask the government for an explanation, or declare war? Cobra looked at him seriously, trying to see something in his eyes. Air did not hide away, but looked at him firmly. The two were in a stalemate for a while, and Air suddenly laughed out loud, and revealed his purpose under Cobra's doubtful eyes. I'm not that stupid. Declaring war with the government now will only lead to death. What we should do now is to select elite soldiers to train intensively and strengthen our own strength. Then wait for the opportunity. I believe that in the near future, the government will definitely suffer when faced with unprecedented challenges. That's our opportunity. Seeing Air talking about his plan enthusiastically, Cobra sighed silently in his heart. Do you have the qualifications of a king? Sure enough, he is unwilling to be ordinary. The idea is great, but what about the funds? You can't cultivate talents without money. In Alabaster's case, there isn't much money in the treasury to support your plan. And how to arrange the specific training plan, who should be responsible, and how to solve these problems. Regarding these issues, Air had already made up his mind. He stood up and said to Cobra with a smile, I've already taken care of the funding issue. You can just send someone to accept it when the time comes. As for training, Air took out a small book from his pocket and put it on the desk, explaining, this is Marine's training method, and it also contains the training experience I compiled about Marine's 6 styles. For training, leave it to Jaka. After all, I'm still in Marine and there are some things I can't do, so I feel relieved to have him come. As one of the 2 patron saints of Alabaster, Jaka can be said to be loyal to the royal family. Air believes that he can definitely complete this task. By the way, speaking of Jaka, there is one thing I have always wondered about. For thousands of years, Alabaster's patron saints have been jackals and falcons. But it is such a coincidence that the 2 leaders of the kingdom happen to be jackal and falcon fruit power users. Is there any connection between them? This question existed before Air traveled through time. He had never found a chance to solve this question before. Now that the time was right, he asked it casually. Hearing this question, Cobra was stunned for a moment, then shook his head in amusement and explained, this is indeed not a coincidence. In fact, these 2 fruits have been passed down with the royal family for thousands of years. Every ability user will enter the royal tomb before passing away. After they die, the fruits will be reborn on the fruits prepared in advance in the tomb. Air's face lit up, and he quickly wanted to ask, but Cobra stopped him with his hand. I know what you want to say. You want to bring other people with abilities into the tomb, kill them, and then let their fruits be reborn in Alabaster, right? Air nodded repeatedly. Yes, in this way we can quickly build an army of ability users, and the country's foundation can also be enhanced. Chapter 67 The Origin of the Patron Saint. Cobra chuckled lightly and said with a smile, didn't the successive kings of Alabaster think of such a simple truth? If it were so simple, the ruler of the world would not be the world government, but the Nefertari family. Air asked confused, are there any restrictions? Nodding, Cobra said, yes, Nefertari's ancestors have tried this method before, but without exception, after the death of all ability users, their fruits were not reborn in the tomb, but then appear somewhere in the world. After calming down, Cobra stood up and took out a book from the bookshelf, handed it to Air, and then said, have you heard? Devil fruit will be affected by the host and change. Air was startled and quickly took the book and read it carefully. What is recorded in the book is an old-fashioned story. I don't know how many years ago. There were 2 amazing and powerful people in the kingdom. They were the 10th generation jackal and the falcon fruit power user of the kingdom. One year, a war broke out in the kingdom, and the opponent was a coalition of several countries. Even though Alabaster had 2 strong men in charge, there were still heavy casualties. In the end, it was the 2 strong men who repelled the enemy at the cost of their own serious injuries and dying. Before they died, the 2 of them had been worried about the safety of their motherland and wanted to continue fighting for the country. But in the end they died of serious injuries. The contemporary king was very sad, and at the same time he respected the 2 men who saved the kingdom from danger, and specially allowed them to be buried in the royal tomb as a mark of respect. But who knows, at the moment when the 2 were buried in the tomb, the jackal and falcon fruits that were supposed to be reborn from humble beginnings were silently reborn on the water spring's tribute. The contemporary king attributed this to the obsession of the two strong men that changed the fruit, making them exist only to protect Alabaster. Therefore, the king also regarded the jackal and the falcon as the patron saint of the kingdom, which has been passed down to this day. Although there were only a few words in the book, Air was still shocked and his mouth opened wide. He never imagined that there was such a legendary story about the origin of the patron saint. You must know that in his memory, the only person who can affect the fruit is the legendary liberation fighter Yin Yang Shanika. Unexpectedly, these two ordinary fruits also had such origins, which really opened his eyes. Closing the book, Air took out a breath and said with emotion, "It's really a legend. No one will believe it if I tell you this." Cobra nodded in agreement, and said in a tone of experience, "Yes, when I found out about this, I thought it was a joke made by an ancestor, but later I realized that it was true." "So you know it, too." "The plan to plunder fruits on a large scale is not feasible." Shrugging, Air said nonchalantly, "Forget it, I didn't expect this at first, just stick to the original plan. By the way, I want to borrow Belle for a while." He changed the subject so unexpectedly that Cobra didn't even react. Seeing this, Air took it as if he agreed, picked up the justice coat that was placed on the chair, and said without looking back, "Then it's settled." "What's agreed? Did I agree?" Cobra held his chin with one hand in confusion, completely unaware that Air had left. Following the direction of his knowledge, Air found Belle who was training alone at the training ground. Regardless of his doubts, he pulled him into an empty room without anyone. "Your Highness Air, what do you want from me?" Belle asked impatiently as soon as he closed the door. After sensing for a while and confirming that there was no one nearby, Air took out a permanent pointer from the headquarters and his own phone and handed it to him, and then said, "Belle, I need your help with something." Belle took the two things, looked at the word Sleeping Ancient Town on the pointer and asked curiously, "Whatever you need me to do, you can just tell me." Hearing this affirmative answer, Air felt very relieved. So he briefly told him about the bat fruit. "I don't know exactly what this fruit looks like or where it is. The only certainty is that it must be in Sleeping Ancient Town. So you have to search for it slowly after you get there. This may take several years. You have to do a good job." Prepared mind. Belle did not hesitate after hearing this and firmly accepted the appointment. "Please rest assured that no matter how much time it takes, I will find it, even if it takes a lifetime." "No, no. That's not the case. Although I don't know where it is, I know it is related to bats. You can look for it in caves and places where bats are found. In short, everything depends on you." Belle nodded and said, "Please allow me to go back and prepare. I will set off tonight." 17. Air patted his arm and walked out of the room first. Belle looked at the permanent pointer in his hand, remembered Air's instructions, and secretly swore in his heart that he must complete this task. Thinking about it, he carefully put his things into his clothes, walked out of the room calmly, and left the palace to get ready. Air was very relieved to leave the important task of finding the phantom species and bat fruit to Belle. If nothing else, in terms of loyalty, he is the most loyal in the entire kingdom, even compared to Ikem and Jaka. What Hero is worried about now is not that he has any evil intentions, but that he is in the new world in Sleeping Town. He is worried about whether Belle will be in danger, or whether he can find the bat fruit in Sleeping Town. Forget it, it's useless to think too much. I believe Belle can solve it. Shaking away the thoughts in his mind, Air came to the room prepared for Ain, intending to chat with her. But who knew, as soon as he opened the door, he saw Vivi and Ain looking at each other in a stalemate. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the two women turned their heads and looked at him with murderous eyes. A drop of cold sweat dripped from Air's head, and an unpleasant feeling lingered in his heart. "Well, I suddenly remember that I have something else to do, so I'm leaving first." After saying that, he turned around and wanted to run away. "Stop!" 2. The two women shouted coldly in unison, and Air stopped stiffly, turning back as if resigned to his fate, waiting for the two of them to leave. After the two women's narration, Air finally understood what happened. It turned out that Vivi knew that Air's friend was visiting and was curious to come and have a look, so she met her. After Ain knew that the little girl in front of him was Air's sister, he happily took her and chatted with her. Originally, the two of them were having fun and chatting happily until Ain felt that she was his sister anyway. He told her that she was Air's girlfriend. But now Vivi quit, and the newly established sisterly friendship fell apart immediately. She was unconvinced and revealed to Air that she was Air's fiancé. Now Ain was also shocked. Didn't she say she was a younger sister? Why did she become a fiancé? Vivi eloquently explained the blood relationship between the two, which was at least 7 generations apart. She also accused Ain of interfering in their relationship as the fiancé recognized by their childhood sweetheart King Cobra. Ain was not willing to give in, so he quickly argued with her, and the two of them remained in a stalemate until Air arrived. After hearing this, Air's heart was filled with chills. He had encountered this kind of surer field. Now he just wanted to find a place to hide. Vivi threw herself into his arms with red eyes and asked with a choked voice, "Air, you like me the most, right?" Ain hugged his chest and looked at Air coldly, waiting for his explanation. Looking at Vivi in his arms, and then at Air sitting on the bed, Air was now 2 heads tall. He gritted his teeth, held Vivi in one hand and Ain in the other, and said that famous sentence under their surprised eyes. "You are both my wings, I like both of you." Vivi has a childish nature in her heart. As long as Air likes her and doesn't leave her, it's fine. She has no idea what liking means, so she immediately beams with joy. Ain, on the other hand, did not open Air's hand, but continued to ask coldly, "We are your wings? What about Nasha?" "I think she also has feelings for you." "And Senior Hina, I remember you have a good relationship. I heard that you rescued her some time ago and brought her back to Alabaster. Could it be that she is also your wing?" Air was so embarrassed that he didn't know how to answer. After thinking for a long time, he said carefully, "Well, it's normal to have two pairs of wings, don't you think so?" After saying that, he quickly swore that he was absolutely sincere to her. Ain stared at him for a long time and sighed helplessly. "I hope." After saying that, she kicked Air out and took Vivi to have a sisterly whisper again. "Have I passed the test?" Standing outside the door, looking at the closed door, Air scratched his head. "I know that being a time traveler still has some benefits, otherwise my trip would have been in vain." Thinking of his future happy life, Air couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Why are you still staying out?" "Go away." A roar came from the room, and Air rubbed his nose and left the place. "It seems that we are still far from being able to truly embrace each other, Seed, so we have to keep working hard." Making up his mind, Air walked away without acknowledging his relatives. 1-1, 1-1, follow up and don't fall behind. In the marine base by the port, Air was running on the playground with his sailors. At this time, 5 days have passed since the Shura field broke out. In the past 5 days, Air and his team had done nothing except purchasing supplies and repairing ships. In the kingdom, Cobra first sent people to take away the gold brought from Sky Island. When Cobra first saw gold, he, like the sailors, thought it was gold-plated and looked scary. But when Air told him that it was a piece of pure gold, even as a king, his jaw dropped to the ground in shock. When he curiously asked about the origin of gold, Air just smiled and pointed to the sky without saying much. Cobra didn't ask further questions, he just asked people to store the gold, wait for it to be processed, and then find a way to exchange it for Bailey. With money, the rest can be easily solved. Under Cobra's order, Alabaster began to mobilize across the country, and military competitions were held intensively everywhere, and then the top contestants were sent to the capital for training. Finally, those with jackal-fruit abilities will join in the unified training. Air also went to the place where they trained and had a look. Although the competition was still going on, there were only a few areas with few people to distinguish the winners and losers, and not many people came. But it can be seen that these people are top-notch in terms of mental outlook, physical appearance and muscles. Air is very satisfied with this. As long as the national competition is over and all the elites gather together and select the best from the best for special training like the Marine Elite Battalion, he believes that Alabaster will definitely give birth to a powerful army. In short, everything in the kingdom is in order, and Air has nothing to worry about. After being delayed here for so long, it's time for him to go to the G34 branch to complete his duties. After saying goodbye to Cobra and others, and making a promise to the crying Vivi to visit her at least twice a month, Air left on the warship. White Sand Island was originally an uninhabited island, but due to its key location, it could kill the pirates who had just entered the Grand Line in advance. He was selected by the headquarters to build ports and fortresses here, forming the current Marineg 34 branch. As soon as Air's warship sailed into the port, a large number of sailors ran out of the base. When the wooden planks were lowered and Air and his party disembarked from the warship, the Marines lined up in 2 rows immediately saluted, showing grand etiquette. Air saw an old acquaintance as soon as he came down and waved hello to her happily. "Hey, Major Hina, long time no see." Yes, his senior sister Hina was also among the welcoming crowd. Since Air went to naval headquarters, she has been resting in Alabaster until the warship is repaired. People returned to the G34 branch. Hearing Air's name, Hina turned around unhappily, motioned for them to follow and said, "Let's go to the conference room first. If you have anything to say, we'll talk about it later." When the officers standing beside her saw this situation, they had no choice but to look at each other helplessly, saluted Air and followed him. The group of people entered the base under the eyes of the sailors and walked into a spacious conference room. Everyone sat down in order according to their military rank, and Ain, Nasha, and Bins were no exception. Air directly sat on the main seat, glanced at the officers sitting neatly on both sides, and introduced himself first. "I am Colonel Air of the Naval Headquarters. Under the orders of the headquarters, I serve as I am the base director of the G34 branch. Please give me your advice in the future." After speaking, he looked at Hina and continued, "Major Hina, please introduce your colleagues to me." "Yes." Hina stood up, looked at the man beside her and introduced her. "This is Major Cheeks, an experienced veteran who has been in Marine for many years." Cheeks stood up, saluted Air solemnly and then sat down again. Hina introduced another person. "This is." After the introduction, Air basically got to know the leadership within the base. In addition to the people brought by Air, there are currently 4 majors in the entire base, including Hina, Kemp, Scullon. The rest are lieutenant-level officers, a total of 14 people, including Ain and others. There are 17 people. Together, these people are the leadership of the entire base. They are responsible for managing all aspects of the base. There are some things that Air does not need to worry about at all. He only needs to be responsible for catching pirates. After the introduction, Air chatted with them for a while to deepen their feelings, and then let everyone disperse. Only he and acquaintances such as Hina and Nasha survived. Leaning back on the chair, crossing his legs, Air said jokingly towards Hina, "It seems that we are very destined, Major Hina." Hina smoked a cigarette without any fluctuation in her expression, and said calmly, "Congratulations, Colonel Air. I didn't expect you to be promoted again so quickly and become the base commander of the G-34 branch. Haha, it's just good luck. I didn't expect Marshal Sengoku to arrange it like this. But it turned out to be the Marshal's order, so I will definitely complete the mission of the headquarters. Plus there is a major. With your help, I believe there will be peace in the waters under the jurisdiction of G-34. TCH, you are still so annoying." Hina is not happy. Air wanted to tease her, but when Ain glared at her, he had no choice but to keep his mouth shut. Ain sat next to Hina, held her hand and said happily, "Senior Hina, I haven't seen you for a long time. I never thought we could work together." "Ain, long time no see, you look beautiful again." With a slight smile on her face, Hina happily chatted with Ain, and Nasha also came over to join their conversation. For a moment, the two men in the room were ignored. Air, who couldn't wipe his mouth, sighed helplessly and walked to the window alone to look at the busy sailors below. "A new journey has begun, and I want to start building my legend." 0134095242122144. Since he became the base commander, a large warship in the G-34 branch automatically became Air's new ship. Large warships are a level higher than the original warships in terms of the number of people they can carry and their speed. So Air left the port with Hina, Ain, Nasha and more than 300 sailors, and began patrolling the nearby waters. Binz was left behind. Hina was not happy at first, but Air promised that he would fully guide her in Haki's practice, so she nodded and agreed. In this way, Air, surrounded by three beauties, began his happy time. Chapter 68 An Unexpected Gain. And 3 years later. Calm down, feel the air around you, and look for my breath. In the training room, Air guided with a wooden stick. Hina's aides were covered with thick cloth, her head was covered with sweat and she was breathing heavily. Snapped. Another stick was slapped firmly on her butt. Hina finally couldn't help it and roared, "Don't hit Hina. Are you here to teach me, or are you here to take advantage of me?" Air held the stick in his left hand and slapped the palm of his hand. Japan said seriously, "The key to the color of knowledge is to be calm. You need to eliminate all distractions around you and empty your mind. You must know that the color of knowledge cannot be used when you are emotionally excited and lose your calmness. I am training your mental endurance." After these high-sounding words, Hina couldn't find a reason to refute even though she was angry, so she had to readjust her breathing and continue training under Air's stick. Ain and Nasha secretly opened the door and saw clearly what was going on inside. They gritted their teeth and closed the door, muttering viciously in their hearts. It's normal for Air to be angry. After all, she is someone's girlfriend. She will definitely be unhappy when she sees Air hooking up with others openly. But Nasha is different. She is jealous because of Air's partiality and having a one-on-one special pap with Hina. Nasha has always admired the strong. Ever since she met Air and saw his unimaginable strength, a seed was quietly planted in her heart. As time went by, her admiration for Air became more and more, and even slowly turned into love. Just when she was thinking about how to express her feelings to Air, she suddenly found that there were more and more women around Air. First there was Vivi. She was okay, just a little brat who clung to her brother and didn't understand anything. But Ain, who joined later, was different. The two were not only classmates who had been together for many years, but they had a deep relationship. Nasha was also keenly aware of the inadvertent intimate behavior between the two. This discovery made her feel uneasy and kept her awake for a long time. But before she could think of a solution, Hina joined in again. Now, Nasha couldn't sit still anymore and decided to find a time to directly express her feelings to Air. Regardless of whether he agreed or not, she would get her wish. Unfortunately, before she could find a chance, a hurried shout interrupted her plan. "Pirates found." "Everyone, get ready." Following this sound, the sailors on the warship immediately started to move, and each found their posts to wait for the commander's order. Nasha abandoned her distracting thoughts and immediately came to the bow of the ship, took the telescope and looked towards the sea. Sure enough, a ship flying a pirate flag appeared in sight. The other party seemed to have discovered them, and instead of running away, they turned the ship's bow and sailed straight towards this side. Air and Hina also heard the noise, stopped training and came out. Arriving at the bow of the ship, before he could ask, Nasha handed him the binoculars and said, "It's the Scythe pirates who just entered the Grand Line from North Blue. Captain Shinigami Barrack has a bounty of 50 million Baileys." Air didn't care how much the opponent had posted. He hadn't made a move for a long time and immediately asked the sailors to speed up and let the opponent pass. The two ships were approaching, but the pirates on the opposite side had no idea of the seriousness of the matter. They didn't even fire their guns. but rushed over with high morale and planned to engage in a boarding battle. Air followed their wishes and jumped directly onto the other side's deck after the two sides were less than 50 meters away. He caught the one who looked the most imposing and gave him a hard hammer, leaving the pirates on the ship dumbfounded. But there was no time to surprise them now. Hina, Ain, and Nasha led the Marines to attack aggressively and suppressed them all at once. The confrontation ended quickly. Air put down the shabby sandbag in his hand with a relieved look on his face and walked towards Ain and his party. "How is it? What are our casualties?" Hina looked at him coldly and said calmly, "Except for a dozen people who were slightly injured, everyone else is fine." Nasha also added from the side, "The other party's captain and carders were all stopped by us, and the remaining dozens of pirates are no match for the soldiers." After speaking, she glanced at Hina angrily, protesting that she was taking the job that her adjutant reported to. "Wait, you mean captain?" Air looked at the pig head behind him, pointed at him and asked doubtfully, "Isn't this guy the captain?" Hina sneered and did not answer, while Ain and Nasha looked at him with confused expressions. Finally, Nasha explained in a low voice, "He is a carder on the ship. If I remember correctly, it seems that there is a reward of 8 million for the chef." Air scratched his head in embarrassment and said sheepishly, "It's the chef. I'm sorry that this guy is so weak. He fainted after being punched by me." After explaining, Air looked at Hina and said with a serious expression, "Major Hina, you just laughed at the commander with a very bad attitude. I will train you more strictly when you return to the ship." Hina ignored him, lit a cigarette, walked around him, and followed the sailors to search for loot. Looking at her back, Air raised his eyebrows and secretly decided that he must spread her ass today. Hina walked into the cabin and looked at the layout inside. Except that the captain's cabin was particularly luxurious, the rest was similar to that of ordinary ships. The sailors were rummaging through the boxes, especially the group of people who had followed Air from the beginning. Seeing that they wanted to remove even the wooden boards for inspection, Hina left in boredom. Walking deeper, he finally stopped in front of a door labeled storage room. For some reason, I opened the door and walked in. I opened a few wooden barrels and found that they were filled with fresh water and grain. Just when Hina felt bored and wanted to turn around and leave, a bag opened to reveal several unknown fruits caught her attention. Hina walked over curiously, picked up a piece of fruit, looked at it for a few times, and took a bite. Then her eyes widened and she looked shocked. This is of course not because the fruit is too delicious, but after she picked up the fruit, a mysterious fruit that looked like an apple but had dense patterns on the outside was revealed in the bag. "This is a devil fruit." Hina suppressed her surprise and returned to the deck with devil fruit. On the deck, the three of them were still chatting without a word. The three of them were shocked when they saw Hina coming back, especially when they saw the devil fruit in her hand. Hina casually put the devil fruit into Air's hand and said calmly, "I found it in the storage room. It was mixed with ordinary fruits and was not discovered by the pirates." Air nodded blankly, then reacted suddenly and quickly greeted the three of them back to the warship. Air came to his room immediately, opened the desk drawer and took out a devil fruit illustrated book. This was a book he copied from Cobra some time ago. He thought it would be a reference when he encountered devil fruit in the future, but he didn't expect to use it so quickly. Comparing the pictures in the book, Air flipped through page after page and suddenly stopped on a certain page. After careful comparison, he was finally sure. He said excitedly to the three people who were looking at him, "It's the soft fruit of Paramecia." "Soft fruit? Can it make objects soft?" Ain asked doubtfully. Shaking his head, Air explained, "Although its name is soft, its ability is more than that. It allows the user to change the hardness of the objects it touches, including itself, and make it soft or hard at will." As he said this, Air suddenly had the idea of keeping it for himself. Among other things, the ability to harden himself was simply a man's dream. Thinking of this, Air looked at the fruit with intense eyes. Hina, the oldest and most mature, looked at him as if she had guessed what he was thinking. She snatched the soft fruit, looked at Air with disdain and mocked, "Don't think about it, you have already eaten the devil fruit. Give this one to someone else." Air's expression was stagnant and he didn't say anything stupid about how he could still eat. I had to reluctantly look away from the fruit. "If you can't eat it, then who will gift this fruit to you?" After thinking for a while, Air suddenly looked up at Nasha. "Nasha will be my wife sooner or later. If she eats it, doesn't it mean that I have eaten it? There's nothing wrong with her." After thinking about it, Air put his hands on her shoulders and said in a sincere tone, "Nasha, this fruit is handed over to you. Your strength is the lowest among us, and this fruit can just make up for your strength." Insufficient. Her body trembled, and Nasha looked at her in surprise, as if she couldn't believe what she heard. "Give it to me." She was incoherent and didn't know how to speak. Hina didn't speak, but silently handed the fruit to her. Ain also came to her side and stroked her back to encourage her. Scanning her eyes from the faces of the three people one by one, Nasha finally couldn't help but shed tears from the corners of her eyes, and excitedly threw herself into Air's arms. "Thank you all." Ain, idiot, let go of your hands. Hina. Obviously Hina found the fruit. After the fun, Nasha finally took the fruit and took a bite. The three of them did not remind her when they saw this, but smiled at her reaction. Sure enough, like all other ability users, Nasha's expression changed the moment she took the first bite of the fruit. Holding back her nausea and painfully swallowing the pulp, Nasha took a few quick breaths, and then waited expectantly for her own changes. A few minutes later, Air looked at his hard fingers. His eyes glowed with gold, and his eyes at Nasha became a little more intense. Rolling her eyes at Air, in annoyance, Hina said seriously to Nasha, although you have eaten the fruit, you still need to continue to develop it. At the same time, your physical skills must not fall behind. From today on, I will guide you in training until you master Marine 6 styles. Yes, Hina instructor. In the following period, Hina and Ain followed Air in the morning to learn 2-color haki. In the afternoon, the two taught Nasha how to learn 6 postures. In addition to training, Air's main focus is on catching pirates and guiding the training of Alabaster's elite royal army from a distance. Time flies by quietly with the full exercise every day, and 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye. 3 years later, somewhere in the New World, accompanied by constant gunfire, a pirate ship fled with difficulty in the sea. What's wrong, Captain? The marine bastards are catching up with us again. We can't use too much force. Please give me flowers. Captain, it's bad. The bilge was hit by a cannonball, and the ship started to take in water. Captain, the wind direction has changed. We are now facing the wind, and the ship's speed has dropped. Captain, one bad news after another continued to reach his ears, and the captain of the pirate ship finally couldn't stand it anymore. Barak hacked one of his chattering men to death, walked to the bow of the ship, raised his blood-stained sword and shouted angrily, "You guys, Lozi is the bloody knife Barak with a bounty of 180 million, and the enemy is just a young marine rear admiral. Keep your spirits up." The crew members looked at me and I looked at you. They all lowered their heads and did not dare to speech. Looking at these useless guys, Barak became furious, pointed a knife at the navigator on the boat, and ordered in a cold voice, "Turn around, Lozi, or Lozi will chop you to death first." The navigator's feet softened and he almost fell to his knees. He wanted to try to persuade Barak, but as soon as he saw his bloodthirsty eyes, he was so frightened that he didn't dare to say a word. So he had to be honest. Really command the ship to turn around and kill the warships in the rear. On the warship, the lookout watched the pirate ship suddenly turn around and turned around to report to a young man lying on a deck chair, "Air Rear Admiral. The opponent has turned around and is approaching us at full speed." Air lifted his blindfold, looked at the darkening sky and said weakly, "Then let's take the opportunity to deal with them. I'm tired of chasing them for a long time." The sailor saluted and turned to convey the commander's order. After yawning and stretching, Air stood up and walked onto the bow. 3 years later, Air is still wearing a white suit with a white shirt underneath, looking simple and capable. It's just that his height has increased from a little over 1.7 meters 3 years ago to over 2.3 meters now. He already looks like a little giant. As soon as he stood up, Marine, a beautiful woman with white short-sleeved shorts and thighs wrapped in flesh, handed him a towel. Air took the towel and wiped his face, smiled and said to her, "Nasha, you are still so considerate." Nasha smiled back, put her hands behind her back, and happily Kaido said, "This is what I should do. I am your adjutant." As soon as the words left his mouth, Rishu's sweet voice interrupted the conversation between the two. "I didn't hear that the adjutant still has this responsibility. It should be my girlfriend who does the job of wiping my face and washing my face." Nasha turned her head angrily and looked in the direction of the sound. I saw Ain, who was wearing the same black shorts and black stockings as her, standing behind them, folding his arms and looking dissatisfied. Holding her, she opened her legs and walked to the other side of there with the clatter of high heels. She challenged Nasha, "Miss Adjutant, let me, as your girlfriend, do this kind of work in the future." "What nonsense are you talking about? Of course the adjutant has to take care of all aspects of the officer's duties and life. This is my responsibility, and I am also Air's girlfriend." "Are you kidding me? I've never heard that an adjutant has to take care of this. You just made it up." "As for your girlfriend, as long as I don't admit it, you will never be one." "I protest. It's not your decision whether you have a girlfriend or not." "No. I am the eldest sister in the family, so of course I have the final say." "Who can say it?" "I don't admit it." So the two of them started quarreling in Air's ears, talking to each other. Not wanting to get into trouble, Air had to sneak away quietly and stay away from the two quarreling women. After hiding away, Air looked at the two people who were still arguing and sighed silently. Originally, after Nasha ate the devil fruit, she expressed her feelings to Air. Ain finally accepted her and expressed his willingness to share with her. But ever since Hina silently mentioned which of the two was the eldest sister in the family, the two began to argue. Both are 21 years old this year, and Nasha is a few months older than Ain, so according to her, she is her sister. Ain, on the other hand, believes that he should be the one to establish a relationship with her first. Of course Nasha didn't agree, so she moved Vivi out, saying that she was the one who confirmed the relationship with her first, and she immediately became his fiancée in one step. Ain was choked and unable to refute, so she took the second sister's position again. The two started arguing again. In the end, it was Vivi who, as the eldest sister, established the status of Ain's second sister without knowing what means Ain used. There is nothing Nasha can do if she doesn't agree. Before Hina is confirmed to be Heir's girlfriend, the minority obeys the majority and she can only become the third child. But she was still unconvinced and argued with Ain all day long. Finally, Ain got angry and joined forces with Vivi to expel Nasha as his girlfriend. Then, the conflict between the two became even greater. The three of them never asked Heir for his opinion, leaving Heir helpless now. Just when he was leaning against the wall with a headache, Hina appeared next to him, put a cigarette into his mouth, took one in her mouth, and raised her chin to signal Heir to light it. After Heir used his power to light the cigarettes for the two of them, Hina leaned next to him and joked, "You are so popular. They have to quarrel over you a dozen times every day." Chapter 69 News about the bat fruit. He rolled his eyes at her angrily. After all, wasn't she the one who initiated this matter? By the way, Hina is really not a social girl. Both of them cater to his preferences and wear shorts and stockings. She was still wearing the same burgundy long trousers, wrapping herself tightly. "Okay, stop talking and find a way to help me persuade them." Hina raised her eyebrows, looked at him playfully, smiled and said, "This is your private matter. I have no reason to persuade them." Hina refused. After taking a deep breath of cigarette and throwing away the cigarette butt, Heir looked at Hina sincerely and said, "You have more experience and strength than the two of them. And your character is also stable. In my opinion, you are their eldest sister, so I leave this task to you." Hearing these words of confession, Hina's cheeks blushed slightly but quickly returned to normal. "The pirates are coming, let's deal with them first." After saying that, she avoided Heir's sight and walked around him. At the moment when the two people's bodies were intertwined, a word came to Heir's ears. "But since it is your request, I reluctantly agreed." As soon as the words came out, the two people standing back to back slightly raised the corners of their mouths. On the pirate ship, the stunned King Black could not have imagined that at this time, they were frightened and prepared to die and planned to fight hard. On the marine warship opposite, a bloody fight for husbands was still going on, and they did not pay attention to them at all. Looking at the warship getting closer and closer, and thinking that the lookout hand saw someone who was exactly the same as the one in the newspaper, Barrack's heart gradually became anxious. Swallowing, he cursed viciously, "What a bullshit marine rising star, what a bullshit fire dragon. Losey just borrowed your head to become famous in the world." After encouraging themselves, the two sides tacitly stopped the bombardment when they were 200 meters away. After the two ships got a little closer, Barrack and his men launched the attack first. 577 Barrack took his deputy captain Jason, who had a bounty of 90 million, and slashed two flying slashes with his sword at the same time. The snipers in the pirate group also aimed at the sailors and started sniping. The marines did not show weakness. The two swordsmen, Ain and Nasha, also responded with slashes. Hina appeared in front of the marines and knocked away all the bullets that were coming from several directions. The pirates looked at the three people who took action, and they immediately named the three people. They are the subordinates of the Fire Dragon, the Dark Prison Hina, Timane and the Man's Nightmare Nasha. Many pirates were frightened upon hearing these names. In the past few years, Heir has been catching pirates everywhere and has become famous. At the same time, information about several of his women has also been reported incidentally. Morgan's also named each of them based on their abilities, making their names known to more people. When it comes to this, Nasha has something to say. The other two women's names are normal. But when it comes to her, it becomes weird. This is interesting to say. Heir was not around at the time, and the three women were on a mission together. When they encountered a pirate group, although the three of them teamed up to defeat them, they still let the captain of the pirate group run away. Unexpectedly, within a few days, the captain actually ran into the G-34 base and voluntarily surrendered. After asking later, everyone found out that Nasha used her fruit power to soften him during the battle. Although he gradually recovered, he didn't know why his little brother was always weak and unresponsive. After trying many methods to no avail, the captain lost all hope and went directly to the base to surrender. I don't know how this matter was found out by the reporter, and it spread all over the world with the newspaper. All the men tensed up after reading this report, and their hearts were filled with fear when they looked at Nasha's smiling face in the newspaper. At this point, the title Man's Nightmare spread. Hee, Nasha, your reputation is good for you. The pirates across the way were so frightened that they didn't dare to come over when they heard about you. Ain covered his mouth and joked angrily. Nasha's face turned red. No matter how many times she heard this name, she felt ashamed and wanted to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. "Shut up, you bastards, go to hell." Along with the words, she wielded Chindong and slashed a 10-meter-long slash, which was enough to show how angry she was. Ain also showed no sign of weakness, and struck at the opponent with continuous and rapid slashes like rain. Hina directly raised his hands and fired dozens of iron spears, piercing the opponent's ship with holes. Barrack and the vice-captain managed to block the two women's slashes, but were unable to deal with Hina's iron spear. A small carder just wanted to stop one of the iron guns, but he didn't stop it for even a second. The iron gun plunged deep into the cabin with him. Barrack cursed secretly. All his men were trash, and the probability of survival would be even lower if this continued. But now there is no way out. We can only fight hard. Young ones, come with me and rush up to fight with them. Barrack jumped on the warship immediately, and Vice Captain Jason also followed closely and slashed at Nasha with his knife. When Hina's armed kick blocked Jason's attack, she turned her back to the two women and said calmly, "You hold Barrack, and he will help you after I deal with it." Needless to say, Ain and Nasha were already fighting with Barrack. The three of them are all swordsmen. Although Barrack's strength is not weak, he can't get away from the two women who are ability users. Hina looked at Jason, who had a calm face and maintained a fighting posture with a knife in both hands, took a deep breath of cigarette, and took the lead in launching the attack. Shave. The red figure came to Jason in an instant and whipped his waist with a whip kick. Jason reacted quickly, dodged with a sidestep, and then quickly struck Hina with two slashes. Hina waved her hand and conjured an iron rod to easily scatter the slash. The two looked at each other, a strong fighting spirit rising in both of them. Whoa. The two disappeared at the same time, fighting fiercely together again. Perceiving the battle between the three women with his own eyes, Air was very relieved and did not intervene. After 3 years of special training by him, the strength of the three women was no longer what it used to be. At this time, the two ships finally collided with each other. The pirates waved their weapons, howled and fought with the sailors. "Oh, I can't be idle either. Let's clean up the soldiers and get some results." 100 million volts razor. Air pressed his palms on the deck, and thunder and lightning as thick as his fingers spread forward in a network like small snakes. Cooperating with his accurate sight and color, he assisted the little snake to bypass Haxion with wisdom and accurately hit the pirates. Zrazlatilda. As the sound of electricity passed by, except for a few who looked like carders who were left by Air to practice with his subordinates, the other pirates all twitched and fell to the ground not knowing whether they were alive or dead. The few carders who were lucky enough to still be standing looked at their fallen comrades beside them and felt that their legs were weak, and a cold air from head to toe made them shiver. Air passed through the circle of marine soldiers, looked at several pirates and pointed their thumbs behind them and said, "In a one-on-one duel with my subordinates, whoever can win the market in a row, I will let him go." A pirate looked around, swallowed his saliva and said softly, "Can you guarantee it?" Air glanced at him, summoned a bolt of lightning and chopped him into charcoal, and said coldly to the remaining pirates who huddled in fear, "Believe it or not, it's up to you. If you don't want to, just die." Never mind. None of the pirates dared to hesitate, so they quickly nodded and agreed. In this way, a dozen low-level officers under Air picked their opponents and fought with them with a grin. Air just held his chest and watched the battle from the sidelines. From time to time he would tell the surrounding sailors some of the key points of the battle or the shortcomings of the officers during the battle. Unlike Air, who was holding a leisurely duel competition, Barrack on the other side was very uncomfortable, because he knew the abilities of Ain and Nasha in advance. He was always timid in fighting and did not dare to have physical contact with them. With a knife, he parried left and right, fled up and down, and the fight was very embarrassing. Clang! He fought with Ain again, and when faced with Nasha's kick, he quickly jumped back. But as soon as Barrack's legs landed on the ground, he realized something was wrong. The deck under my feet was as soft as plasticine, and my whole body sank uncontrollably as soon as I landed. Taking advantage of the moment when he was unstable and lost his center of gravity, the two women stepped forward together and patted him with a purple and yellow light on their hands. In desperation, Barrack jumped out using a technique similar to moonwalk, dodged Ain's ability, and blocked Nasha's palm with his knife. After several violent steps away from the two women and reaching high altitude, Barrack let out a sigh of relief. Looking at the soft, paper-like saber in his hand, Barrack threw it away helplessly. "Now that I don't even have any weapons, it's even more uncomfortable to face these two women with disgusting abilities." Barrack considered the situation on both sides and decided to run away immediately. Just when he was about to escape, a series of sound breaking through the air came towards him. Barrack, who was unarmed but had good knowledge of sight, easily escaped the enemy's sneak attack. He glanced in the direction of the attack and saw that his vice-captain was tied into a rice dumpling from head to toe with iron hoops, and Hina was stepping on him and looking at him quietly. Seeing this, Barrack strengthened his decision to escape, decisively ignored his men, let go of Yazi and ran for his life. Unfortunately, just as he was stunned for a moment, Ain and Nasha also chased after him on the moonwalk. The sword light flashed, and more than a dozen slashes were struck, blocking the space for him to jump out of the window. He twisted around in embarrassment to avoid all the slashes. Barrack took a closer look and saw that the three women had formed a triangle and surrounded him. Knowing that he could not escape, Barrack clenched his fists and roared before launching the final charge. With the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground, Hina threw Barrack, who was also tied into a rice dumpling, onto the deck. Air looked at the two rice dumplings and several pirate carders who had been beaten into pig heads with satisfaction, praised the three women for a few words, and then returned to the room alone. After closing the door and lying on the bed, fell into deep thought. 3 more years later, I was transferred to New World after being promoted from Commodore to Rear Admiral 2 years ago. His subordinate Hina was also promoted to Colonel, and Ain and Nasha also made rapid progress and became major officers. As for the G-34 branch that was originally managed by him, it was temporarily handed over to the headquarters by Kixie, who was formerly a major and was now promoted to lieutenant colonel. But Binzi knew that his strength was not enough, and he voluntarily stayed there for his goddess. From the first half of the Grand Line to the New World, facing pirates whose strength and bounty have increased significantly, Air's strength has improved even more rapidly. Due to the large-scale arrest of pirates and his ruthless killing style towards pirates, Air was therefore dubbed Blood Dragon, Butcher Air, especially after he wiped out a combined pirate fleet with a total bounty of over 4 billion. His reputation became known to more people. By the way, I should have been promoted to Vice Admiral long ago based on my achievements. Why is that old man Sengoku still here? Don't give yourself a promotion. Forget it. Look at my panel. As soon as the thought came to mind, the system jumped out consciously. Ding tilde. Nefertari Dr. Sex, male, age :16, #236. Personal abilities, physique SSS, 124,874 1 millionths, swordsmanship SS, 22,320 250,000, physical skills SS, 5,962 250,000, Haki, armament Haki SS 75,114 250,000, observation Haki SS 94,181 250,000, conquerors Haki SSS 54,484 1 millionths, skills and moves, shave S, moonwalks, tempest kicks, finger pistols, iron body, paper artser. The number of words is a little small. Devil fruit, dragon fruit SSS 200,914 1 millionths, thunder fruit SS 40,201 250,000. Experience points, 67,000. Fusion fruits, 2. Overall evaluation, SSS for Emperor's level. Looking at this gorgeous panel, you can think of how much effort Air has put in the past 3 years. At the beginning, he led his men to directly block the entrance to the upside-down mountain, and settled down directly at Twin Capes to arrest pirates indiscriminately from all over the world. For a time, it became so famous that, except for a few stupid young men, no other pirates dared to come over. Seeing that there was no gain, Air had no choice but to take people back to the base to continue patrolling. But before long, he couldn't help but cause trouble again, leading his men around the world to carry out cross-regional arrests. This made the bases of other branches full of resentment, and finally jointly reported to the marshal, accusing him of ignoring the regulations and leaving his duty without permission. Sengoku took a look and thought, "You are capable of causing trouble. You like to catch pirates, right? Come on, I'll give you a promotion, and you can go play in the New World." In this way, he bid farewell to the lovely subordinates of the G-34 branch, bid farewell to Cobra, Vivi and other family members, and came to the New World. The result made Sengoku dumbfounded. Instead of taking the special passage reserved for Red Line's world government-affiliated agencies, Air dive 10,000 meters to the Fishmen Island. Block here and capture all the pirates who want to go to the New World or go back to the first half. They even successfully eliminated some human traffickers who wanted to catch fishermen, gaining the favor of the residents of the Fishmen Island. It's a pity that his move touched the interests of some high-level people in the world government and was resisted by them. In addition, Air accidentally captured a certain pirate group who had just joined Whitebeard's command. In 2.3, Whitebeard issued a kill order. At that time, he was not strong enough and had to leave reluctantly. When leaving, many mermaid ladies and fishermen came to say goodbye warmly, which made Air almost lose control and chose to stay here. After leaving the Fishmen Island and officially entering the New World, Air was not idle either. He went to Shanks territory today and captured a group of pirates under Big Mom's banner tomorrow. In addition, Kaido, who was already interested in him and sent people to recruit him, Air has offended the 4 emperors 10 times. Time returned to the present. Air closed the panel, thinking about the purpose of coming to this sea area this time. One day, he was sent to sleeping Air and suddenly contacted him. After searching for the fruit he dreamed of, he finally found it. However, Bell seemed to be being watched. He knew that Air had come to the New World, so he contacted him, hoping to teach Air the fruit as soon as possible. Upon hearing the good news, Air quickly changed his flight and rushed towards sleeping ancient town. Thinking about it, Air suddenly felt something and took out a piece of paper from his pocket. This was Bell's life card. At this time, a spark lit up in the corner of the life card, and as time passed, the life card gradually shrank. This is an abnormality caused by Bell being injured and his vitality decreasing. Damn it, there are still 3 days before I sleep in the ancient town. Bell, you must hold on. Cough 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 tilde. No, the task entrusted to me by His Highness Air has not been completed. I cannot die here like this. Apostrophe. Near sleeping ancient town, in a dark cave, Bell was vomiting blood and had more than a dozen wounds on his body. He was sitting down in a corner and hiding in a corner, panting and weak. Although he was bruised, his hands held the small wooden box tightly and refused to let go. Chapter 70 Danger. On the other side of the cave where Belle was hiding, a group of fierce-looking men armed with weapons were searching for traces of him. The leader of this group, a thin man with 2 muskets across his waist, looked at one of his men and asked coldly, "Are you sure he has a treasure on him?" Hearing what the boss said, the sly-eyed subordinate nodded repeatedly. "Kaido, Captain, I swear, I saw with my own eyes that there was a devil fruit in his box. The men came out of the tavern last night and happened to see Belle carefully carrying the box containing the fruit into a remote hotel. As a user with Zone's mouse fruit ability, he turned into a big mouse and followed him out of curiosity, and then happened to see Belle opening the box to check the situation. In order to prevent accidents, his subordinates found the captain of their pirate group and reported their gains. After listening to his men's stories, the captain led his men to surround Belle's room overnight 24. Fortunately, Belle noticed it and activated his fruit power to turn into a hawk and fly out of the window. What I didn't expect was that the captain was also a sniper who could sense the situation. He fired several shots at Belle in the night sky through his perception. Although Belle escaped the bullets aimed at his vitals, he was still seriously injured. Coupled with the salvos fired by others, he had more than a dozen bullet holes in his body. Belle gritted his teeth and rushed out of the pirate captain's range of perception, escaping to a cave on another part of the island and hiding. The furious pirate captain organized people to search the entire island overnight. Several more men came to report, and the captain waved them impatiently to continue the search. He found a stone and sat down to rest. Damn, this bastard is really good at hiding. Losey can't even find him with all his knowledge. I cursed and cursed for a while as if to vent my anger, but then I thought about the beautiful image of eating the devil fruit, becoming stronger, and dominating the new world. He mustered up his energy again, stood up with a slap on his thigh, and continued his search. The island where sleeping ancient town is located is not too big. Under the pirate captain's knowledgeable search, they found the cave where Belle was hiding in only one day. After repeatedly confirming that there was only one exit in the cave, the captain and several of his confidants slowly entered. Click. The sound of something being crushed was particularly harsh in the empty cave. Even though his body was still very weak, Belle still stood up alertly, drew his knife and made a fighting posture. "Idiot, how many times have I told you to be careful?" Sensing that the other party had discovered him and others, the captain no longer hid, and while scolding his men, he approached Belle carelessly. Thanks to the power of the falcon fruit, Belle can clearly see the opponent's situation in the dark cave. Looking at the 4 people walking towards him, Belle knew that he was doomed. "Sorry, Your Highness, it seems that my mission cannot be completed." He grasped the sword with a firm gaze, and instantly transformed into a human animal form, planning to engage in a final life-and-death fight with the opponent. Just when the war between the two sides was about to break out, a big war was about to begin. With a loud bang, the entire cave shook violently. "What's going on? Is there an earthquake?" No, what is this?" The pirate captain leaned against the wall of the cave and sensed the situation outside. When he swept past a huge creature, he screamed in disbelief. The men didn't know why. Looking at the frightened captain, they couldn't help but have an ominous premonition in their hearts. No. Spare me! ! Suddenly, screams came from outside the cave, as well as the heart-rending shouts of a group of pirates. Several people in the cave looked pale. They didn't know what was happening outside and didn't dare to go out to check. Only Belle seemed to have guessed something, and couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief and smiled. As the screams gradually decreased and disappeared, a steady sound of footsteps came from the entrance of the cave. The captain's legs were trembling, and he had guessed the identity of the visitor as he sensed everything with his sense of sight. The legendary Phantom Beast fruit power user can transform into a fire dragon that covers the sky and the sun. He shows no mercy to the pirates and slaughters them all brutally. It's unmistakable. It's the blood dragon heir. As the words fell, a handsome young man holding a fireball appeared in everyone's eyes. 007. After seeing the person coming, Belle was completely relieved and sat down on the ground. Ding-ling-dang-kang tilde. There was a sound of weapons falling, and the pirates shed tears and knelt on the ground in fear, kowtowing and begging for mercy. "Lord Heir, please let us go. We are forced." "No, don't kill me. I will never be a pirate again. Please let me go. Let me go. I still have a wife and children to take care of. Please don't kill me." After observing that Belle's paper of life was about to burn out, Heir made a prompt decision and turned into a dragon alone and rushed over. At this time, Heir ignored several people's cries and begged for mercy. Instead, he looked at the pirate captain and asked calmly, "Who do you want to contact?" Hearing his voice, several people couldn't help but turn their heads and look at the captain. The captain was seen frozen on the spot, holding a phone bug quietly in his hand, and it seemed that he had already made a call. Chapter 71 Doflamingo. New World. Inside Dressrosa Palace. Tilde. A man wearing sunglasses and a pink coat rang. "Young master, your phone number." Baby 5, a member of the Don Quixote family wearing a maid outfit, held the phone and said to the man sitting on the sofa, "Fufafu, could you please come over?" The man, Doflamingo, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, said with a stern smile, "Since it is the young master's need, I will definitely complete it." Hearing that he was needed, Baby 5 immediately ran to Doflamingo's side with the phone bug in hand. Reaching out to pick up the phone, Doflamingo smiled and asked, "Who is it?" There was no immediate response from the other side, but a young voice said, "Take it." After that, the other party responded, "Are you younger master? I am Thomas. Please save me. I met the blood dragon Air when I was collecting devil fruit for you." When Doflamingo heard someone from the other side announcing his home address, he didn't know who it was. But after hearing Air's name, he couldn't help but frown. But then relaxed. "Fufafu, is he the kid from Neferutari's family?" "Hey, he is by your side. Give him the phone bug." The pirate captain in the cave heard the young master's order, stood up tremblingly, held the phone bug in both hands and handed it over. When he heard the title Young Master and that iconic laugh, Air guessed who was on the other side. "Since he is interested in you, have a good chat with him." Taking the phone bug, Air said, "Hey, Don Quixote's family, what do you want from me?" Hearing Air's name, Doflamingo smiled even more wildly. "Fufafu, kid, I've been paying attention to you for a long time. I like your character very much. What do you think? Do you want to join me? Let's do something great together." Air raised his eyebrows, not expecting Doflamingo to recruit him, and decisively refused. "Forget it, I'm not interested in the big things you talk about." "Well, that's really a pity. In this case, just let my lovely subordinates go." "You know, I didn't do anything that violated the government's laws. Marine is not qualified to arrest Shikibu's I's subordinates." Wow! Air whistled and mocked mercilessly. "I didn't expect you to say such shameless words in a serious manner." "You are truly worthy of it, Doflamingo." Then he ignored the gloomy look on the phone bug's face and continued to speak. "Who do you think you are? Still a high-ranking celestial dragons? Don't forget that you are just a wild dog that was kicked out of your home. Lozi will not listen to your orders." "Shikibu's I? Damn it, it's not like I haven't killed Lozi before." "You idiot wants me to let him go? Damn you." After scolding, Air hung up the phone with a snap. Under the stunned eyes of the pirates, Air took a long breath and said happily, "It's refreshing." "Brother Ming, this shameless thing, insists on talking to me. Isn't he coming to scold me?" After venting, Air looked at the pirates, showed a kind smile and asked, "Is there anything else you want to say?" "I won't have the chance later." While Air was massaging the pirate's muscles and bones, Doflamingo looked at the hung-up phone bug, his anger rising like crazy. Doflamingo covered his face, the veins on his forehead popped out, and with anger, a terrifying conquerors swept around, attracting the attention of the rest of the family. Suddenly, he started laughing nervously, and said loudly with a ferocious expression, "Fufafu, Neferutari Ii, don't be too arrogant. A traitor with a D in his name will sooner or later be liquidated by the government. I will wait patiently for this moment to come." Fufafu tilde. Baby 5, who heard the conversation between the two, hid far away, looking at the angry young master and not daring to speak. On the other side, after Air dealt with the pirates, he quickly carried Belle and went to the town to find a doctor for treatment. After the operation, after repeatedly confirming that Belle was fine and out of danger, Air found an unoccupied room and took out the fruit. Looking at this palm-sized fruit with an ordinary appearance and purple mysterious patterns, Air swallowed hard. "Eat it and I will have eternal life." Taking a deep breath, under the temptation of eternal life, Air opened his mouth and bit it. Ignoring the disgusting taste, Air quickly swallowed the pulp and then quietly felt the changes in his body. The experienced Air quickly became familiar with the new ability, and a pair of sharp fangs grew under his control. The room also fell into darkness, and I couldn't see my fingers. After experiencing it for a while, this fruit gave Air the feeling that it is good for money, and it has no other useful effects except immortality. First of all, its physical increase is not as big as that of the fire dragon fruit. Secondly, it has no other special abilities. It can only turn off the lights and make the vision dark, which is useless to the knowledgeable and powerful. Of course, this may also be because Air has not developed the fruit enough. Maybe after leveling up, he will be able to discover other unknown abilities. Quickly summoning the system, Air spent 46,600 experience points in one breath to stack the bat fruit vampire form to S level. Closing his eyes, Air carefully understood the power of the vampire fruit, and then opened it suddenly. Sure enough, this fruit is not simple. It is exactly what I expected. Chapter 72 The Power of the Vampire Fruit. Vampire fruit. Since they are all vampires, what is the most well-known ability of vampires? Vampire? Transform into a bat? Look handsome? No. The most important ability of a vampire is the first embrace. It is the ability to transform other people into compatriots. This is the ability that Air desires most. When he was playing games in his previous life, the abilities displayed by the Red Earl Barak Redfield were mediocre. Apart from being able to become younger, there was almost nothing outstanding about him. Of course, the Red Earl has just eaten the fruit, and it is normal for it to be at this level without development. But just as it is, many people have more speculations about vampire fruit. Among them, There is one guess that Air finds very credible. That is, the vampire fruit allows people with abilities to embrace others for the first time and transform ordinary people into vampires. As the fruit level reaches S, it means that the vampire fruit has reached the level of awakening. Air also confirmed this conjecture. According to his feeling, as long as he wants to, he can turn others into the same kind. Newly born vampires are not afraid of sunlight or silverware. Their only weaknesses are seawater and sea floor cloth, the nemesis of those with abilities. But in the face of a strong physique, sensitive senses and absolute loyalty to oneself, this is nothing. Then there is the price you have to pay when you first get Air. The price is also very simple. It takes 10 years to convert one into one. It may seem harsh, but it's nothing to Air. Just find a pirate to steal their lifespan, and there is basically no consumption. Thinking of the image of himself commanding thousands of vampires in the future, oh no, it should be an army of noble vampires. Air trembled with excitement. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Air walked out of the room. He closed his eyes and opened his eyes. The SS level plus Thunder Fruit bonus easily covered the entire island, filtering out ordinary conversations and various noisy sounds. He accurately targeted a certain pirate group that seemed to be holding a banquet. The corner of Air's mouth curled up, and with a flash of lightning, seer, his figure disappeared in the hospital. On the coast, the unknown pirates who had just escaped the pursuit of Marine and came to the island were holding a lively banquet to celebrate their escape from death. Gurgling, burping one of them drank a big gulp of fine wine, burped, put his arms around his companion's shoulders, blushed and shouted loudly, "What Marine, what Rear Admiral? Haven't we escaped? I think Marine is just like this. With the captain here, I will see who can catch us." The companion he was holding pushed him away with a look of disgust on his face, fanned the air that contained the other's bad breath with his hand, and said disdainfully, "Now let's start bragging. When we met Marine before, who hid in the room and was so scared that he didn't dare to come out." As his voice fell, there was a burst of laughter from the crowd. Listening to the ridicule of his companions, he slammed his wine glass on the ground in embarrassment, stood up crookedly, pointed at the crowd and retorted loudly, "Losey just happens to be unwell, otherwise what the hell Marine, come and kill one Losey." After he finished speaking, the pirates did not refute, but opened their eyes wide in horror and pointed their fingers tremblingly behind him. "What are you doing? Are you frightened by Losey's momentum?" the drunken man asked in confusion, not yet understanding the situation. At this time, a hand was placed on his shoulder, and a strange voice came from the same time. "Really? Since you're so powerful, I can't let you go." The pirate gangster turned his head in confusion. Who are you?" Before he finished speaking, the moment he saw the face of the visitor clearly, he immediately turned to stone. Air looked at the drunkard in front of him and smiled kindly at him, and the hand on his shoulder lit up red. Before anyone could react, he quickly aged. His skin became shriveled, his hair lost its luster and turned from black to white, and even his teeth became loose. Of course, the kind-hearted Air did not let him continue to live in this world in this body. Instead, he directly absorbed all his vitality and sent him to the paradise. The scene in front of them scared the pirates enough. It was already scary enough when they saw the legendary butcher Air, but now they saw this weird scene. Many pirates were so frightened that their eyes rolled over and they fainted. Past only has a lifespan of 35 years. I didn't expect this unlucky thing to be short-lived. It's really unlucky. Unhappily, he threw the shriveled corpse aside. Looking at the garbage, Air opened his hands and black mist filled his body. Little bats were summoned by him from the mist, and they clung to the pirates' bodies with precision, biting into their exposed skin. Following the bursts of screams, the pirates began to wither and age like the previous minions, until their vitality was completely absorbed and they died completely. After the target died, the little bats reunited and flew back into the mist. Feeling the surge of vitality in his body, Air opened his hands and laughed like a villain. "Ha ha ha, I have gained a lifespan of more than 2,000 years in one fell swoop. Celestial dragons, just wait for me, I will pull you down one by one." Chapter 73. The First Dependent. By the time Air returned to the ward, Belle had already woken up. Seeing his arrival, Belle struggled to get up and asked anxiously, "Your Highness, where is the fruit?" "Where is it? Don't worry, I've already taken care of the fruit. You haven't recovered from your injuries yet, so take a good rest first." Air comforted him and helped him lie back on the bed. Looking at Belle, who was still caring about the mission even though he was seriously injured, Air suddenly asked, "Do you want to see the power of that fruit?" Belle was stunned for a moment, first a little confused, then turned into surprise, looking at him in disbelief. Your Majesty, are you?" "Yes, that fruit was prepared for me, and I have already eaten it. It is also a rare phantom beast species with magical power." "How about it? Do you want to try it?" "Try it?" Belle didn't know what Air's words meant, but he nodded obediently. And he also wanted to see what was so special about this fruit that he had been looking for 3 years. The moment he nodded, the ward was suddenly shrouded in darkness. After a second, the darkness subsided and there was light again in the room. Belle looked at the image of Air in vampire form with wings on his back, blood-red eyes, and 2 fangs. He thought for a while and asked hesitantly, "Is this a vampire?" Air nodded, then shook his head. "Vampire sounds so ugly. I still like to call myself a vampire." Bloodlines? After muttering a few words, Bell no longer cared about the issue of address, but asked about abilities expectantly. Hearing this question, Air raised the corner of his mouth and said, "You'll know if you try it." After saying that, without waiting for his reaction, Air leaned over and bit his neck. Bell was startled at first, then his neck felt a slight tingling, and then a strange energy quickly poured into his body along Air's teeth. Air let go of his mouth and stood aside to carefully observe his changes. Bang bang bang. Bell's eyes were blank, and his heart was beating dully, and it was beating faster and faster. After reaching a certain critical point, he suddenly let out a roar. With a hiss, two big holes opened in the hospital gown he was wearing, and a pair of wide bat wings sprouted from his back. About 10 minutes later, Bell's consciousness returned. He subconsciously wanted to reach out to support his head, but he saw long and sharp nails on his hands. He sat up suddenly and looked at his hands in surprise. At this time, he felt something strange behind him again, and when he turned around, he saw a pair of strange wings that were different from the falcon form appearing behind him. Thinking of something, he couldn't help but lick his teeth with his tongue. Sure enough, he felt that he had 2 extra pairs of fangs, upper and lower. He looked at her in disbelief. He had too many questions about the changes in himself. "Your Highness, what's wrong with me? I'm obviously a person with falcon ability. How could I become like this?" Touching his body, Bell asked anxiously. "This is my new ability. How do you feel?" Bell touched his body, and suddenly he was stunned. He reacted suddenly, pulled off the bandage on his body, looked at the wound that had healed as before, and shouted in shock, "It's healed." Even as a zone user, I wouldn't have been able to recover within 10 days. But now I'm completely healed. Accelerate healing? I have to write this down too, Air muttered, pulling the confused Bell up from the bed. "Let's go outside and test your new form." After saying that, Air took Bell, who was in vampire form, and left the hospital with the doctor's confused look full of questions, and came to an uninhabited open space on the edge of the island. After 2 hours of testing, Air had a clearer understanding of the strength of his dependents. First of all, Bell's strength, physical strength, perception, and recovery speed have been greatly improved, according to his own judgment. The increase is about 8 to 10 times. Then there are the same 3 forms as the general zone, namely human form, the previous human animal form, and the animal form that can transform into a big bat. 0. Finally, Air also captured a gangster in the town for him to suck blood from. Bell didn't resist, opened his big mouth with fangs and bit into it. But after taking a few mouthfuls of blood, Air found that there were no special changes in him. Bell opened his mouth and thought for a while, then under Air's confused gaze, he used sharp nails to make a 20-centimeter-long wound on his chest. After the blood flowed out, he bit the gangster again and began to suck blood. Then, Air watched in shock as his wound healed quickly. In less than a minute, the wound of more than 20 centimeters on his chest had healed as before. But the equivalent price is that the gangster dies completely and his vitality is sucked dry. But neither of them had much reaction to this. Bell felt his powerful hands, looked at Air with admiration, and said excitedly, "Your Highness, this is simply a miracle. With this power, I believe that Alabaster will definitely be more brilliant under your leadership." Chapter 74 Sengoku'S Call. Air was very satisfied with Bell's changes. After spending another 2 days helping Bell get familiar with his abilities, Hina and his team finally arrived. Seeing the 3 girls, Air was about to share his joy with them, but was interrupted by Hina's next words. Air rolled his eyes angrily. Hina took out a phone bug from her pocket and said to him, every time he ran so fast, without a phone bug, Marshal Sengoku'S phone calls almost went crazy. Hina was very angry. "Why is the Marshal so anxious to see me?" Air took the phone call in confusion and asked strangely, "Ask yourself." Seeing that Hina didn't want to talk to him, Air 987 had no choice but to call Sengoku boringly. As soon as the call was connected, Marshal Sengoku'S roar came from the other end of the phone. "Bastard Air, where are you? Have you forgotten what I told you before? Get back here." Holding the phone bug far away, after Sengoku finished speaking, Air carefully approached and asked, "Don't be angry, Marshal. I'm on my way to the headquarters now." "Well, as for what you told me ... does it mean that I'm going to be promoted to Vice Admiral?" Sengoku on the other end of the phone was almost driven crazy when he heard what he said. He smashed the table in front of him with his fist and roared, "If you don't arrive at the headquarters within 3 days, you can go to the recruiting camp and work as a soldier." Snapped. After saying that, the phone was hung up forcefully. Air looked at the phone bug in his hand with a confused look on his face, and looked at the 3 women for help. Hina took a deep breath from her cigarette, looked at this idiot and said helplessly, "World Summit, have you forgotten? The Marshal told you a month ago, asking you to return to the headquarters as soon as possible and there will be a task assigned to you." Having said this, Air suddenly thought about it, as if there was such a thing. Since the quadrennial World Summit is about to begin, The headquarters needs a large number of manpower to escort the king, guard the leader's territory, and increase the intensity or patrols in the empty 4 seas and the front section of the Grand Line. Now that the time for World Summit is approaching, the kings have already set off. This guy Air is still wandering around outside, so of course Sengoku is angry. Air, who had completely remembered, didn't say much, and quickly took Bell with him to climb the warship and rush towards the headquarters at full speed. Fortunately, Suigu Town is not far from the headquarters, and we can directly cross the Red Line through the government's special passage and enter the first half. When boarding the Red Line, Air could clearly feel the tension here. Although the kings have not yet arrived, there are more than 3 times the number of patrolling soldiers than before, and even Air was interrogated when it processed above. After getting off the other end of the Red Line, boarding a new ship and continuing towards the headquarters, Air called the 3 women to his room. In the room, the 3 women sat in rows and opened their mouths wide as they watched Air transform into a new form. Nasha took the lead and couldn't help but ask, "Air, aren't you a fire dragon fruit user? Why can you still turn into a devil?" Looking at Nasha, who was struggling to call herself a devil, Air knocked her head angrily and corrected, "What kind of devil? I'm obviously a vampire, more accurately a vampire. Blood clan?" The 3 of them were even more confused. Hina crossed her legs, crossed her arms, and said as if it was true, "That's another devil fruit ability, right?" After saying that, she ignored the surprised expressions of Ain and Nasha and continued, "I noticed before that according to you, you ate the fire dragon fruit, a species of phantom beast. I also looked through your devil fruit illustrated book. It didn't even mention that users with fire dragon fruit abilities can control thunder and lightning. I didn't pay much attention to it at first, thinking it was because the picture book records weren't detailed or for other reasons. But now it seems that you probably gained the power of thunder and lightning by eating other fruits." After saying this, the 3 women looked at him with fiery eyes, waiting for his answer. Air wiped the cold sweat from his head and said, "You are really sharp." He praised her dryly and frankly confessed his abilities to the 3 of them, confirming her guess. Even though Hina was mentally prepared, she was still surprised when she heard Air's personal admission, and felt that her worldview had been impacted. Looking at the 3 women who were numbed by the shock, Air coughed quickly, brought the 3 women's attention back, and talked about his purpose. "We'll talk about this later. I called you here today because I have something to discuss with you." With that said, Air told them all about the vampire fruit's abilities, as well as the situation of 2.1 Bell. After hearing this, the 3 women all changed their expressions, and their eyes shone brightly. In their ears, any powerful power, like Zone's transformation or super speed, are secondary. The only thing that attracts them is eternal life. Restoration of youth. What does this mean? This means eternal youth, ageless appearance, not to mention Nasha and Ain. Even Hina, who has always been calm, couldn't stand this temptation, and was annoyed that she wasn't the one who ate this fruit. Chapter 75 Tasks and 21 Jobs with a Sharp Knife. Looking at the 3 distressed women speechlessly, Air said silently, "Actually, I can share my lifespan and youth with you." Upon hearing this, the 3 women's eyes immediately lit up and looked at him expectantly. But at this time Hina calmed down, and she suddenly asked her, "You said the person you embraced for the first time will be absolutely loyal to you, right?" "That's right." Air nodded and admitted, then stared closely into Hina's eyes, patiently waiting for her next words. Nasha and Ain also felt the change in the atmosphere, and right tongue became quiet. Lighting the cigarette, Hina took a deep breath and blew out a smoke ring. "Embrace me for the first time and let me become your dependent." Her eyes were firm and she spoke her mind. "Since you told us your secret, we have to keep it for you. Let's start with me. After all, Hina is my sister." After listening to her words, Nasha and Ain didn't care that she called herself sister, and asked Air to embrace them for the first time. Looking at the firm eyes of the 3 women, Air said nothing, leaned over and bit Hina's snow-white neck. Hina hummed, then reacted, her cheeks blushed and she closed her eyes, putting aside distracting thoughts and feeling the changes in her body. Air hugged Ain and Nasha for the first time in turn. With 2 sweet calls, the 2 girls also began to transform. 10 minutes later, looking at the 3 women in front of him, Air fell into deep thought. Cute, small wings, little tiger teeth that are not intimidating at all, plus big red Kazilin eyes, except for the iconic love tail, it is simply a living succubus. Is this a vampire? Who would believe it? Air roared crazily in his heart, but his body became inexplicably excited. The 3 women looked at their new looks through the mirror and were very satisfied with themselves. Compare Air's ugly wings, exaggeratedly long nails and fangs. They think they look better in their own way. Air, who was despised by the 3, showed a malicious smile and kept the 3 women in the name of checking their bodies. 3 days later, Air and his party finally arrived at Marineford. Air, who had thick dark circles under his eyes, was greeted by the sailors of his headquarters and walked on the way to the marshal's office. Air yawned and became extremely angry when he thought about what he had experienced in the past 3 days. That day, when Air hugged Ain and wanted to do something bad, Nash's palm with a soft fruit power pressed on his body. Then Air was forced to calm down and experienced the feeling of a soft man for 3 days. Up to this point, Nasha and Ain still didn't let him go. They often came over to tease him when they had nothing to do, which made him angry but had nowhere to vent, and he almost suffered internal injuries. Fortunately, the headquarters finally arrived. Nashin unlocked her ability, and Air regained her glory. Air, who had regained his true self as a man, immediately grabbed the 2 goblins, pushed them on his legs, and gave them a good spanking before venting some of his anger. Without anyone to guide him, Air came to the door of the office with ease, knocked on the door twice casually, walked straight in, and sat down on the sofa. Under Sengoku's cannibalistic gaze, Air unknowingly picked up a piece of fruit, leaned on the sofa, and said vaguely, "Marshall, I'm back." Snapped. Sengoku slammed the table, stood up, pointed at him and rebuked angrily, "Air, look at the good things you have done. Provoking redheads, arresting Big Mom's guests and ruining her tea party, publicly calling the Celestial Dragon stupid pigs in the newspaper. You still ignored my orders and just returned to headquarters now." Sengoku cursed for more than 10 minutes without even breathing. Air has seen this kind of scene many times in the past 3 years. He smiled shamelessly and explained seriously, "That's what Morgan said when he provoked the redhead. I just walked around his territory and didn't do anything. As for my aunt, every time she holds a tea party, many pirates and underground forces are invited to go there. I just grabbed a few of them. As for the Celestial Dragons, I'm telling the truth, most of them are horribly stupid." Looking at Air talking eloquently, Sengoku felt that one was as big as the other. This bastard is like this every time. No matter what you say, he has a reason to refute it. The key thing is that although most of the things he did were reckless, they did win Marine a lot of good reputation. Even if he occasionally disobeyed orders and was warned by himself, this kid would always reflect on his face and turn around and treat his words as farts. Because of his attitude, he and the top government officials have been suppressing him and refusing to promote him. But this guy's achievements are much more real, with the intensity of hunting down pirates. Except for Ainu, I guess no one in the whole headquarters can match him. Rubbing his eyebrows helplessly, Sengoku interrupted his chatter and got to the point. "Well, after discussions between the headquarters and the world government, the butcher appointed you as Marine Yuan to open the headquarters Vice Admiral." When he heard that he had been promoted to Vice Admiral, Air was slightly startled, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Instead, he bargained with a smile, "Marshal, you might as well give me the title of Alternate Admiral to save you trouble in the future." Sengoku couldn't bear it anymore, picked up a document on the table and threw it at him, while roaring angrily, "Take the documents and get out immediately. Don't let me see you again without my order." Air took the file with a smile, waved to Sengoku, turned and left the office. After closing the door, Air walked back and opened the file in his hand under the admiring gazes of Heisei around him. During the World Summit, guard the first half of the Grand Line with a flying squirrel and ghost spider to ensure that the participating countries will not be attacked by pirates. What kind of idiot mission is this? 2. Looking at the contents of the document, Air couldn't help but complain, but besides him, another voice also sounded in his ears. Only then did Air react with hindsight, and turned around to look behind him. "Hey, Air kid, long time no see." Garp, wearing a dog head hat, greeted Air with a smile. Seeing Garp's old face, Air stopped and looked at him with one hand on his chin, showing a malicious smile. "Hey, Vice Admiral Garp, you are finally back from East Blue. I just heard that the Marshal was looking for you. Please go and have a look." When Garp saw his smile, he knew that this brat had no good intentions. He had clearly heard Sengoku getting angry just now, so he went over there just to scold him. He hooked Air's neck and forcibly led him to his office, and at the same time said, "We'll talk about Sengoku later. I brought some good tea from East Blue and we'll try it together." Seeing that he had not fooled the old man, Air curled his lips in boredom and simply followed him and left. 10 minutes later, Air took a sip of hot tea, put down the cup and looked at Garp, who was also enjoying the tea leisurely, and said relaxedly, "Old man Garp, can you be so leisurely? Marshal Sengoku is still waiting for you to report." Impolite brat. After muttering, Garp calmly took a sip of tea before continuing, "Let him go. I don't want to worry about World Summit." After drinking tea, I will go directly back to the G3 branch. Only you, a willful old man, dare to do this. Muttering secretly in his mind, Air crossed his legs and took out a reward notice from his arms, and said with a smile, "How about going to East Blue this time? Your lovely grandson Ace has become a pirate." What Air holds in his hand is Ace's bounty order. This guy was targeted by Marine not long after he went to sea. Moreover, he had already eaten the Mera fruit at that time, and the first reward was an astonishing 200 million bli. After Air saw his reward order, he put it away just to make Garp angry when he saw him. But the old man Garp actually took a sip of tea calmly and then said, "Oh, and it was over. Air can't fix this. This is completely different from what he expected." Glancing at him sideways, Garp snorted in his heart, "You want to see my joke, but you're still far behind, kid." "Hey, old man, Don't you have anything to say? Ace went to sea and became a pirate. So what? Even if he becomes a pirate, he is still my lovely grandson, and I know him very well, and he will not do anything evil to harm civilians. After saying that, he laughed and put down the cup, took Ace's reward order and showed it off to Air. As expected of my grandson, this is my first time offering such a high reward. Ha 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 tilde. Air snorted in displeasure, but did not refute. For people like Ace and Luffy, rather than calling them pirates, it would be more appropriate to call them adventurers. I hope you can laugh when Luffy goes to sea. Garp was suddenly choked and speechless. He stood up angrily, pointed at Air and said, I specifically asked you to teach them and guide them onto the right path. As a result, now Ace has gone to sea to become a pirate, and Luffy is still talking about stupid things about becoming the Pirate King. How on earth did you teach them? Nani? They are your grandchildren. You didn't teach them well, but you still have the nerve to put the responsibility on me. Faced with the old man's shameless blame shifting, Air refused to agree and quickly retorted. Also, if you want them to become Marines, why don't you bring them back to the headquarters? Under the fist of Mr. Zephyr, what a bullshit Pirate King. They won't dare to say such stupid things for a week. That's my grandson. How can I let Zephyr teach me a lesson? Then don't put the blame on me. I don't care. You must give an explanation. I am 6666666. That is. The two argued for a long time, but Air really couldn't do anything about this scoundrel, so he finally nodded and agreed that he would catch him when Luffy went to sea in the future. After hearing his promise, Garp stopped pestering him and waved his hand to let him leave quickly. Seeing him throw it away after using it, Air felt so angry that he simply took all the tea leaves and snacks on his table into his arms and ran away in a hurry. After running out of the bad old man Garp's office, Air first went to Zephyr's place. Ain and Hina are also here, and the four masters and apprentices who have not seen each other for a long time are chatting happily. Since the last incident with Weibull, the headquarters has become more attentive to every outing of the elite camp for internships. Whenever we go out, the headquarters will try our best to arrange for a free vice admiral or 2 or 3 rear admirals to act together to ensure the safety of Marine's future mainstay. After staying with Zephyr all morning, the four of them had lunch together, and then Air said goodbye to the teacher. Before leaving, Air suddenly opened his hand and gave Zephyr a hug. Zephyr patted his back inexplicably, and then pushed him away. Are you still a kid? Get out of here. I don't want to see it. Your turn. Regarding Zephyr's duplicity, Air smiled and waved goodbye to him. In the process of hugging him just now, Air secretly passed on 50 years of life force to him. This force will not directly make him young again, but will stay in his body and slowly nourish his youth body. Or it may suddenly break out when he encounters a strong enemy, allowing him to have peak strength in a short period of time. But this is also temporary, and it will return to its original appearance after the short-term peak passes. Bye, Teacher Zephyr. Please take care of yourself. I hope you will still be so energetic when I see you next time. After saying that, Air and the three left. Zephyr looked at the backs of the 3 disciples and was very pleased. This was the new generation of Marine he wanted, and it was also the motivation for his hard work for many years. Returning to the warship, Nasha, who was staying on the ship, immediately came over to greet her. Air, what mission has Marshal Sengoku given you? What else could it be? Patrolling. The kings went to the meeting with their elite guards, and a large number of marine troops also went to guard the Holy Land. Now Sehai and the first half of the Grand Line are short of manpower, which requires us to guard our home and ensure the safety of the franchise countries. Air said a lot and suddenly sighed. Alas, every time the Marshal calls me, he calls me back from all the way. Then he scolded him with a shameless face, threw a troublesome task at random, and started to chase people away. It was as if I was always available to 537 and could be a tool for him to vent his anger. Hearing Air complain, Nasha and the 2 girls behind him looked at him with disdain. Isn't it all your fault? After complaining for a while, Air directly called his subordinate Yang Fan and planned to leave this sad place. Just as the warship left the port and had sailed a certain distance, an officer suddenly ran to the shore and shouted at them. Air Vice Admiral, please wait. Air on the boat heard the sound and walked to the stern of the boat curiously to look at the person coming. When the officer saw Air, who was wearing a white suit at the stern and stood out in both appearance and temperament, he quickly raised the gorgeous-looking katana in his hand and shouted, Air Vice Admiral, this is the black sword with 21 skills prepared by Marshal Sengoku for you. Please keep it. After saying that, the officer threw the long knife out with all his strength. Air stood on the bow of the ship and jumped lightly, holding the knife firmly in his hand. The scabbard is silver-white, the sword guard is made of pure gold and is shaped like petals, and the handle is inlaid with a ruby. Hold the handle of the knife and carefully pull the blade out of the scabbard. The blade length is 114 cm, with a wide straight blade, heavy flowered dice, and a sweeping hat. The blade is pitch black and the edge is white with a cold light. Air hung the new saber on his waist with satisfaction and shouted loudly to the officers on the shore, Thank you Marshal Sengoku for me. I like this knife very much. The officer did not reply, but stood at attention and saluted as the ship went away, until it disappeared from sight. Although he obtained a new weapon, What happened in the next few days made Air really unhappy, not to mention being harassed by flying squirrels and others every day, discussing the distribution of sea areas and strategic deployment. They also need to remotely command the sea areas they are responsible for, coordinate personnel adjustments, and material preparations. This series of things can really upset her. Fortunately, after communication, the scope of my mission was determined to be in the waters near Alabaster. In addition, Vivi did not attend the meeting with Cobra this time, which gave Air time to go back and see her. So they hurried slowly. After spending half a month, Air and his team finally arrived at the sea area he was on duty. Being a good leader, he took a walk around the area, handed over the command to Hina, and grabbed Bell and flew back to Alabaster. Today, Alabaster is prosperous. With the blood transfusion of Sky Island gold, vigorous afforestation and water conservancy projects have begun across the country. During the past 3 years, Air also accidentally encountered the small Sky Island, which is where Nami was in Visalia for the past 2 years. After paying the meteorologists a large sum of money, they happily customized a small rain cloud for Alabaster. As long as the rope is magically held on the ground, the rain cloud, thousands of meters high, will be pulled forward. With it, Alabaster has never had a drought again. In the evening, after quietly returning to the palace, Air and Belle separated and found Vivi reading in the room. Coming behind her, Air covered her eyes and said in a choked voice, "Guess who I am?"